Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Konoha reads Naruto fairy tale. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by YagamiNguyen and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Konoha. Tsunade Senju, the Godame Hokage of Konoha, sighed loudly when she finished the huge stack of paperwork her assistant, Shizen. 3 years had passed since the Fourth Great Shinobi War, and after Naruto defeated Tonari on the moon, the world had finally come to an era of peace, something that many years ago Tsunade who never thought she would be able to live long enough to witness. All the shinobi and kunoichi around the elemental nation looked up at Naruto, at their savior. He was currently on a mission with his girlfriend, Hinata Hyuga, and was enjoying one of the greatest time of his life, something that no one in the world deserved more than him. Things had been going more smoothly between the 5 major villages than ever. Shizen, can you? But before Tsunade could finish her sentence, she was suddenly engulfed in a blue light, and before she could do anything, she was warped. Tsunade-sama! Shizen screamed out in surprise, but suddenly she found herself being engulfed in the same blue light just like the Godame Hokage. All around the elemental nations, the same blue light began to appear and covered a few ninja from each village. And then, when the light disappeared, the shinobi and kunoichi had disappeared. Tsunade-sama, Tsunade-sama, please wake up! A familiar voice called out to her. Tsunade slowly opened her eyes and saw the Mizukage's smiling face in front of her. The current Hokage of Konoha stood up and saw the other Kage was standing next to her with a relieved smile on their face. She stood up and looked around the place they were in. The place around her looked like the stadium of Konoha, but 10 times bigger and had a lot of chairs around the table. Tsunade looked around to see a lot of familiar faces have the same curious look like her. She could see the Kankuro and Temari chatting with each other near them. The familiar guards of Meitarumi also was standing near their Mizukage and talking with each other, Killer Bee who was standing with his students and of course, raping about the awesomeness of this place. Tsunade also saw her assistant Shizen talking with Naruto's favorite teacher Irika. She also saw Jounin like Anko, Ibiki or Kurenai, who was pregnant, was standing with each other. All the clan head was also present, even a few citizen was there, especially 2 of Naruto's favorite person, Tuchi and Ayam. Sakura was talking with Sasuke, and appearing to be really happy to see him again. Kakashi was chatting with a Jounin from Kumo, but Tsunade didn't remember his name. She could also see all the rookie 9 of Konoha was standing around this place. And of course, Guy was shouting everything about youth alongside with his student Rock Lee, while Tenten and Niji were looking at them and disappointed. Wait, Niji? Tsunade gasped and looked around her and saw the 4 previous Hokage and her eyes beginning to water when she saw Jiraiya and Kushina talking happily with each other, well, except for her granduncle Tobarama was scowling about his brother childishness. Minato was introducing his wife to the first and second Hokage with a happy expression on his face. After everyone had introduced each other to everyone, with the only exception of Jiraiya who happened to receive a hard punch from Tsunade and lost conscious for 30 minutes, but after he woke up he received another punch from Tsunade, and lost conscious again. The ones had participant in the 4th Great Shinobi War spent some more time to tell the lost one like Kushina and Niji about what happened in the war and especially Naruto's life for Kushina. To say the Uzumaki girl really proud of her son was an understatement. But she also hated the village for treating her son like a monster at first, but thanked them for helping her son in the world, especially the rookie 9. Minato and Kushina was a bit miffed they couldn't see Naruto, but were happy that he was okay and finally found a girlfriend in the princess of Hyuga. Well, the introduce was over, but I'm wondering, does any one of you know where we are? Minato asked and looked around the stadium. I thought this place was familiar, but it totally different than anything I have seen. He took out his triprongs kunai, and even I can't use Hiraishin here. Something wasn't right about this place. The other nodded their head. Some of them had tried to use ninjutsu here, but found they couldn't do anything. The only exception was taijutsu and Tsunade's superhuman strength. Whoever sent us here must be really powerful if they can bring the dead people back to life. Sasuke spoke up and many shinobi nodded their head. Then suddenly, something appeared on the table in a flash of light, which then revealed to be a small book with a gold cover and a strange mark that resembled a bird under the title. Hashirama, who was the nearest one to the table, picked it up and showed everyone the book. Fairy's Guardian? Jiraiya asked aloud, getting confused at such strange title. Fairy? As in the fairies in fairy tales or bedtime stories? We don't know yet. The first Hokage shrugged before pulling a note from inside the book, and gave it a glance before deciding to read it out loud for everyone to hear. Dear Shinobi and Kunoichi of Elemental Nations, the book you're holding is the story about a man who's called Fairy Guardian, take place several thousand years in the future. What? Everyone cried out in utter shock, as a 200 inches flat-screen TV, the largest TV anyone had ever seen, appeared on the table. How is that even possible? Kiba asked loudly, getting confused even more than before. Don't know, but whoever this person is, they want us to read this book. Tobirama Senju said, crossing his arms on his chest. It must be really important then, the future I mean, or else that person wouldn't waste their energy teleport so many alive shinobi in Kunoichi, and bring back the dead ones back and put into a place to read a book like this. I agree with Naidame-sama, Minato said, and Kushina nodded her head alongside him. It's actually hard to believe, but someone with that much power, probably strong enough to see into the future, to write down that book as well. So, I guess I will start first reading it to everyone first. Hashirama smiled and opened the book. Go ahead, brother. Tobirama nodded his head alongside with everyone, he too also curious about his brother counterpart, to see what the boy was doing. Let's see the future. Fairy's Guardian. Fairy Tail charged at Magnolia. The youngest generation of Fairy Tail, against the Dragon King of Apocalypse. Suddenly, the television was turned on by an unknown influence, showing an image of the Dragon King of Apocalypse, Magnolia. He was gigantic, and had an upper body that covered in black, round scales, which in turn were decorated by spiraling, blue markings. His lower body, specifically his chin, chest, stomach, inner tail, thighs and arms, were gray in color, and appeared to be rather smooth. Magnologia's eyes were white and beady, and his head was round and blunt with four large, elongated plates extending backward. His mouth was full of razor-sharp teeth, and attached to his chin was a protrusion that resembled an arrowhead. His large wings were feathery in appearance, akin to a bird's. The scales disappeared at the end of Magnologia's tail, which in itself ended in a stinger-esque shape. A dragon, but that's impossible. The Tsuchikage, Anoki said in shock, while many others looked at the dragon in awe. Well, we're in the future, right? Minato shrugged. It's several thousand years. We're talking about maybe a new species, such as dragon, appeared and started roaming around the world. Well said, Yondaime. Tobirama nodded his head in agreement. Let's continue, brother. Led by Ezra Scarlet, the other members of Fairy Tail returned to aid Natsu in his assault. The screen flashed again, that time showing a picture of a young woman with long, scarlet hair and brown eyes. She had a slender, voluptuous figure that the men with a pervert personality like Jiraiya could only describe as amazing, and outright drooling at her body. She was wearing a silver set of armors with blue skirt and black boots, with the armor's breastplate composed of a single piece of metal, decorated by curved lines and by a deformed version of cross mark with hearts, with the cross right arm extending to the right part of her chest, and the added mark, the same mark on the cover of the book, located under the cross itself. Wow, she's really beautiful. Minato admitted, and I got to admit, she looks a lot like you, dear. With the only exception of the eye color, of course. I have great hope for the future already. Jiraiya chuckled perversely, wishing that the red-haired girl showed a little more skin so he could see what was hidden underneath. Against the dragon, in order to protect their master, in order to protect their own, as a family. Oh, I like that. Hashirama made a small smile and nodded his head. Those words sounds amazing, don't they? He asked his brother. He kept a stoic expression and nodded his head. Nonetheless, I have great hope for the future, but of course, it wasn't the same hope as Jiraiya the Toad Sage. So the dragon must be the villain then? Kushina asked, and her husband nodded his head in agreement. I wonder what villages are they from, assuming that there are still villages of shinobi around, risking their life to save one of their own, and consider them their family. These people's bonds must be really strong. Sarutobi smiled. Please continue, Shodaime-sama. Bringing out everything that was left inside them, Fairy Tail team attacked Magnolia, bringing down wave after wave of magic on its gigantic body. Excuse me again, but did I hear that right, magic? So ninjutsu is no longer used, or even exist in the future. And things we can only hear in bedtime stories, such as dragons and magic, are real and actually exist. Tsunade continued her grandfather's statement with a nod of her head. Everything we have seen so far is so magical, isn't it? Yu Little Makarov, the third master of Fairy Tail, said in bewilderment, completely shocked for what happened in front of his eyes. I want you to know this. Gramps Laxus looked at his grandfather and grinned. I was against this. But do you really think that they're the kind of people who can run away and leave an old geezer behind? His grin got wilder as his hands sparked with lightning that could slay dragon. It's your guild, after all. From what we have heard so far, I believe that the black dragon attacked them, but the old man decided to stay behind and hold him back while he led his people, his guild, to run away. Tsunade said with a small smile. That's some really noble action, don't you think? That action must be from the feeling of love. His guild must be really important to him, and really care about them. Yu Idiot's tears swelled up at the corners of Makarov's eyes. He couldn't believe it, and he didn't know what to say, just watched on while sobbing quietly. We really need more of these people in the future. Hashirama smiled fondly at the old man named Makarov. It's so rare to see such a strong bond like that. A little not too far away from the battle, a young girl, with long wavy, yellow-blonde hair that reached down to her feet with a single lock pointing upwards, large green eyes that appeared to have no irises, peachy skin and a slight childlike build. She was wearing a frilly, pink layered robe with a red ribbon tied in a bow around her neck. Around the chest were 3 blue diamond patterns with 2 blue triangles above. Each series of these was outlined in a hot pink. She wore wing-like adornments around her ears and small hoop earrings and going barefoot. The screen flashed the image of the girl. Holy, she's so cute! Ino and some of the girls squealed out with an extremely high-pitched voice, forcing the boys and men to cover their ears to block the noise from their ears. Their voice had truly lighted up whole place like 1,000 fireworks. She looked at them with a soft smile, yet her eyes were in a sad manner. The next generation of fairy tale. Fairy's tale? Kiba asked, what kind of a name is that? It's fairy tale, not fairy's tale. Tenten shook her head and please be quiet, we might find out sooner if you didn't interrupt us. Fighting against the strongest dragon, anyone who knew about the strength of the Dragon King could see that fairy tale was fighting in vain, as their attacks did almost no damages to the black dragon. With something that size and withstand that much magical attacks, I believe it's no less weaker than a bijou, Minato said, remembering about the day he fought Kyubi for the sake of his village, as well as the climax of the 4th Shinobi World against the Jubi. Though, he doubted the creature would be anywhere as strong as the combination of all bijou. She closed her eyes and put her hands together. Please save them, Mavis Vermilion whispered softly, save fairy tale. He must be calling Fairy Guardian, isn't she? Kushina smiled, tightening her fist at the thought of hope for the magic users, who she had taken a liking to just like anyone that were listening to the story. He must be really strong if she believes he can deal with something like that. Because I dare say that this thing is as strong as Kyubi. But does anyone feel surprised at her presence? Tobarama asked. She was there the whole time, watching the battle, yet no one seems to notice her. Yes, they must be focusing in fighting the dragon, but don't you think it's a bit weird? The Nidaime Hokage looked around. Plus, with her expression and the way she is carrying herself, I don't think she is a normal kid. He's right, Jiraiya nodded. Other than the fact that she is freaking cute, I believe there is something fishy about this girl. Let's continue, Aji-sama. Tsunade turned to her father, who nodded and returned his attention to the book. Ruarar! The black dragon roared angrily and stomped its hands onto the ground, knocking the members of Fairy Tail away as if they were mere flies. The Dragon King spread its wings and took off to the sky before looking down at the island and opened its jaw, sucking in a mass amount of air strongly. He is going to breath fire? I feel something nastier than just fire coming, Hashirama said as everyone held their breath, as the climax of the battle was approaching. Yua! Natsu cried, falling on top of Lucy's back and was blown back several feet. Is everyone alright? Urza asked loudly as she got up from the ground. At this race, there is no chance for them to win. These guys are really tough, aren't they? Kiba said while the rest of the Rookie 9, as well as Team Guy, agreed. Is it strange to say that they remind me of Naruto? Definitely not, Kiba, definitely not. Tsunade chuckled with a shake of her head. Yep, guys like that are really hard to kill. None of our attacks are working at all, Elfman said through gritting teeth, his sister standing beside him, forced to deactivate her Satan soul form. Holy, Jiraiya cursed out with blood flowing down his nose while the males around him just gasped like a fish with a blushing face when the screen flashed, showing the image of Elfman's sister. She was a slim young woman of below average height. She had long, white hair which curled slightly at the ends, with 2 bangs framing her face and reaching down to her chest. Her hairstyle's most distinctive trait was a short, upward ponytail obtained by gathering and tying the hair covering her forehead. She had large blue eyes and a curvy, voluptuous body, with large breasts. Her attire was a shot white dress that was tied together in front of her chest, and there was some bandages wrapped around her arms and legs, showing that she was injured. But it didn't make her any less beautiful in everyone's eyes. It's not fair, Kushina whined with a little jealousy in her voice. How can these girls be so beautiful and attractive? Well, I believe human has evolved in a way that we had never though before. Tsunade pointed out. Urza, Lucy, Mira Jane, all 3 of them are really beautiful. And guess what, all 3 of them have very large breasts. Jiraiya cheered excitedly with his thumbs pointing up. I love the future, he cried. Ignore him, he's always like that anyway. Tsunade shook her head in disappointment. He didn't change, even after his death. This thing isn't using the strength it used when it fought me, Gildark thought as he gritted his teeth, looking up at Agnologia. It's just playing with them. Seriously? Kiba shouted in shock. And Mary Jane seems like she's injured even before the fight. I don't know if the others are in the same condition as hers, but if they are, their chance of winning is even smaller than before, Niji admitted, with a shake of his head. Fairy Guardian, please hurry. It's a breath attack, Gijil shouted when he saw energy began to swirl around Agnologia's mouth. Yep, probably something even nastier than fire. Hashirama nodded in agreement at his previous words. Is it planning on blasting the whole island away? Kana asked in shock. The entire island? Minato asked in shock. Holy, this dragon must be really powerful if it can do something like that with one single attack. He hated it when he was right about the villains compared to the thing we fight in the fourth shinobi world. It's still weaker, but power like that is truly terrifying. Let's just hope that this fairy guardian is strong enough to fight that creature. No way. Seriously? Everyone who can use defensive magic, put the power you've got into it, now. Urza ordered, pointing back to her group. Right. Wendy nodded. Another cute girl. Jiraiya giggled. The women are hot, the little girl's so cute, the future is awesome. Now is clearly not the time for that, Jiraiya. Tsunade shook her head and had the urge to punch him in the face, but decided to hold back for later when he did something really pervert. There's not enough time to draw the seals, Fried muttered. Oh, so there are seal masters around. Kushina said, but I doubt there are anything other than the Shiisukyujin is strong enough to block an attack at that scale and power. And I doubt any of them could use such technique. The others nodded their head in agreement. There's plenty of defensive magic that does not require writing symbol or seals, Levi said hurriedly, sweats pouring down her forehead. By now anyone could feel the vast amount of magic Agnologia was emitting, even from there. Everyone focus all your magical energy on Friedly, Sana shouted. OH, with that hair color, she must be Myra's sister then. Everyone, let's join hands together, Mary Jane Strauss said and offered her hands to the nearest person, her brother, as he took it. We can't let it end here. Natsu cried and grabbed Lucy's hand. His other hand quickly took Urza's hands into his. Okay. We'll never give up, Lucy shouted, as tears flowing from her eyes. Everyone, join your power together as one. Gray also joined in, holding Juvia and Lucy's hands as Fairy Tail stood in a circle. Everyone just sat there silent and waited patiently for the Hokage to continue. Laxus turned to his grandfather and offered him his hand, smiling softly to the tiny old man whose body was shaking, looking at his children in absolute shock. He considered them his children. Sarutobi smiled. Dear Kami, don't let anything happen to these people. Some of the people prayed, wishing for the best to happen and the tide to change. Worse things always happen to the best kind of people. Minato smiled and squeezed his wife's hand comfortingly. Then, gently, he put his hand in Laxus' much bigger hands. A smile made it to his face. We'll all go home together, he said. Fairy Tail stood in a circle as magical energy flared up around them. To Fairy Tail! They cried out all at once, looking up at Agnologia, who then unleashed his breath in a gigantic blast. The whole sky lifted up as the massive attack of Apocalypse approached them. The whole Tenru Island shook violently at the amount of magic released by the Black Dragon. Facing their death, and believe in each other till the end, Hashirama said quietly with a sad voice, these people will forever have my respect. The other shinobi nodded. A few kunoichi quietly sobbed for them. Mavis opened her eyes and smiled softly. You came after all, she whispered softly. Yeah. Eh? The Reikage grinned and shouted as the whole alliance of shinobi cheered out loudly in excitement. About damn time. Looks like the tide has changed. Tobirama nodded his head, being the only one who was keeping his cool around. Man, what a bunch of noisy brats. And I thought this fairy dude will have a better personality than this. Kiba shook his head and groaned out with a hint of disappointment in his voice. But at least he'll save them, and this is the story about him after all. Ino said while leaning her head against Sai's shoulder, right? Sai-kun? Yeah. The former root shinobi nodded his head with a smile. Let's just hope that he's not an emo like Sasuke-kun. The crowd roared out in laughter while the Uchiha only caught into his hand and signaled for the first Hokage to continue. Every single member of Fairy Tail's eyes snapped wide open at that lazy and unfamiliar voice. Looking up, all gasped in shock when they saw a young man standing on the sky, with his back facing them, looking up at the dragon and the dragon's roar approaching them. But what shocked them the most was that his body was glowing, as if it was coated in pure orange energy. He was wearing a long, energy-like high-collar cloak with strange black markings on his back. Excuse me? Tobirama suddenly raised his hand and said, with a kind of tone they had never heard from him before, even his brother, is it just me, or that man's appearance sounds a little familiar? Don't tell me. Everyone widened their eyes in shock after realizing what it was all about. But it's impossible. Kakashi shook his head and said with a serious tone, this is the future we're talking about. Several thousand years in the future, there is no way he is going to be there. There is only one way to find out. Minato nodded his head at his student and turned to look at the first Hokage. Hashirama nodded his head and read. A giant head made of pure raw energy then materialized around his body before the whole body of a gigantic beast appeared, with the same black markings on its body and 9 tails moving behind it like wildfire. The beast itself was big, maybe even bigger than Agnologia himself, greatly resembled a fox with 9 tails. No way! Kushina gasped in shock with her hands covered her mouth, hoping it was not who she thought, but the image on the screen was clearly telling her otherwise. The whole stadium fell into silence as they stared at the flat-screen TV, which was showing the image of a young man with spiky golden hair, standing inside the massive jaw of a beast with his hand raised, palm facing away from him in pure shock. It was Naruto Uzumaki, several millenniums, and yet he didn't look a day older than he currently was. Impossible. But he should be dead. They all knew that the person that even came close to immortality was Orochimaru, but his way of achieving it was nasty, and they couldn't think about or imagine their Naruto doing such thing just like the snake Sannin. There must be a logical explanation for this. Tobirama refused to believe it and urged his brother, please continue. One of his hand raised and the nine-tails fox opened its mouth, small black, white and red orb began to appear and gather together to make a massive black sphere, as big as or even bigger than Agnologia's breath attack. Bijudama Minato nodded his head, still in a state of shock as seeing his son still alive and well after all that time it's alright Kushi-chan, he's going to be alright. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder and gave her a comforting hug. Kushina could only nod her head, but still wasn't any less worried for her son. My job here is done, the young man said and shot the massive orb straight to Agnologia's roar. From now, is yours, Mavis. Wow, he sounds so mature. A lifetime is enough to make a man to become wise. Hashirama made a small smile at Ino's statement. Naruto, on the other hand, must have gone through several lifetimes. If he's really an immortal, then it's not that much of a surprise. I understand, the first master of fairy tales said and closed her eyes. Two attacks collided on midair, creating a powerful explosion that shook the entire sea area. Its shockwave knocked the boat of the spectators back with large and strong wave. Agnologia cried out in pain as the shockwave crashed into its body, launching it toward the sky with no hope to regain the control of its balance. Everyone gasped in awe, but then it was turned into shock when the TV showed an image of a massive hole in the middle of the ocean, with few destroyed lands around it. Zeref stood, watching the destroyed island. Sawyer finally returned, the dark mage whispered and bowed slightly. Thank you for protecting Natsu. And that is the end of this chapter. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. And that is the end of this chapter. Hashirama announced before closing the book and gave it to his student, the Sandaime Hokage of the Leaf, who offered to read next. Silence soon fell over the shinobi and kunoichi that were present within the place. Neither of them could believe that their beloved knucklehead blonde had become an immortal, and was still alive several thousand years in the future. There must be a perfect explanation for this. The Nidaime Hokage, Tobirama Senju, was the only person that was still refusing to acknowledge it, trying to come up with a more logical explanation for Naruto's presence in the future. I refuse to believe this. The white-haired man shook his head. Tobirama, as far as we can see, there is no other way for him to appear in the future like that. His brother said with a serious tone, unlike his usual playful, unless there is a magic that can transport people from the past to the future, but we're talking about many thousand years here. I doubt there is someone strong enough to summon someone like Naruto. Around him, many people nodded their head in agreement. Years after the war, Naruto had become so powerful that they doubted anyone other than Sasuke would be able to hold their ground against him. But how can he become immortal? Kushina spoke up with a worried tone. As Uzumaki is well known for our strong life force, but strong enough to archive immortality, that is something unthinkable. She shook her head. We can only answer that question by reading on, Kushina. Minato said, I believe whatever is going to happen to our son will be revealed in this book. Kushina bit her bottom lips before nodding her head. It was her right to be impatient. She had never gotten the chance to care for Naruto like Minato did when Orochimaru brought him back during the climax of the Fourth Shinobi War, and then as soon as she heard about him she suddenly learned that he was going to become an immortal. I will start reading, the Sandaime said, and everyone soon fell into silence. 7 years had passed since the day Tenryjima was taken down by Agnologia, bringing the top strongest mages of fairy tale down to the deepest part of the sea with it. I still can't believe young Naruto managed to defeat away something that was as strong as Kurama, like it's just another walk in the park. Hashirama shook his head, having witnessed and fought against Kyuubi before. I don't know, with that level of power, should we call him the second Rikudo Sennin or not? Time is the only thing that is holding us ninja back. Tobirama stated calmly, if Naruto is really an immortal, then he has all the thing he needs to grow stronger and stronger. Fairy tale, from the strongest guild of Fiori. So, the world is now called Fiori? Sakura asked in interest. Or Fiori is the name of a continent. Tsunade smiled at one of her disciples, and fairy tale is its strongest guild. I wonder if this guild system works like Ninja Village. I highly doubt that. Jiraiya shook his head. Had become the lowest, weakest guild without its core members. I wonder what were they doing on that island? Anoki spoke up for the first time. And they're all injured beforehand. His granddaughter, Kuratsuchi, said as they could all remember the state Mirajane was in when she fought against Agnologia. Surely something did happen before Agnologia arrived and attacked them. They barely got any new mission requests, even losing their guild building to the new guild in Magnolia Town, Twilight Ogre, forcing the remaining members of Fairy Tail to move out of the town. Must have sucked for them. Kiba chuckled and everyone nodded their head in agreement. But it would soon change because deep underneath the sea, most of Tenryjima remained unscratched. I wonder what happened to the people on Tenra, Kushina said with Naruto there. I don't think he is going to let anything bad happen to them, right? She turned to her husband and asked hopefully. Of course he is, Kushina. Minato nodded his head. Of course he is. Wrapped protectively inside a giant sphere with the symbol of Fairy Tail on the surface. A sphere? Must be a seal or a barrier to protect them. Kakashi replied to his student's question. Remember, when Agnologia's attack and Naruto's Bijudama collided, a powerful explosion was made. Its shockwave was more than enough to blast a massive dragon that can fly into the sky without any control, and it was just the shockwave, not the heat and power unleashed from the explosion. Surely the island won't be able to handle something like that. Inside, the core members of the guild was sleeping, as time seemingly didn't move in there. 7 years and yet they didn't age a single day, all thanks to the magical sphere that protected them and the mysterious young man who stopped most of Agnologia's attack. The shinobi and kunoichi all gasped in awe after hearing about such powerful and magical protection spell. Even the ones who knew and learnt about Uzumaki's Fuinjutsu Act, known for being the strongest sealing art in the world, like Kushina or Minato, was totally speechless and found themselves in a state of shock. Then suddenly, a paper with unfamiliar handwritings appeared on midair before landing on the book on Sarutobi's hands. The Sandaime picked it up, giving it a quick read and started reading it out loud for everyone to hear. Fairy is one of the 3 great fairy magic distinct to the Fairy Tail Guild. He read a spell which converts Fairy Tail members' bonds and faith into magic power. The spell protects the guild from any evil, an absolute defense magic, powerful enough to defend against even time. However, the sphere acts as a stasis chamber, a place in which time stops, thus everyone within the sphere is stuck in a frozen state in which they don't age. Holy Jiraiya cried in shock. That is some extremely powerful spell right there. Wait a second, Sakura raised her hand up to stop everyone from talking. Time is frozen in that sphere. Do you think that it has something to do with Naruto's presence in the future? It was a more logical way to explain the biggest question. But before any new opinions could be voiced, surprisingly, Tobirama spoke up with a shake of his head. I doubt that, child. He said it will take a lot of time, probably no less than a couple of thousands years for chakra, ninjutsu to disappear, or at least forgotten and replaced with a new kind of power. Even if Fairy Sphere, or at least a spell with the same power, is one of the first spells that is going to be created, Naruto will have to live for more than 10 lifetimes for that to happen. Everything is leading to the fact that he is indeed an immortal. It was hard for him to accept it. But when every logical explanation had been eliminated, then the illogical would be the truth. I see. Sakura nodded her head in understanding. 3 great fairy magic. Jiraiya decided to change the topic back to the story, spoke up. If Fairy Sphere is that powerful, you can't help but imagine just how powerful the other 2 spells are. Around him, the alliance couldn't help but nod their heads in agreement. And if I wasn't mistaken, that spell was casted by a little girl. Tsunade chuckled before turning to her teacher. Please continue, Sarutobi-sensei. However, unlike the mage of Fairy Tail, there was one single person within the sphere that was still awake. Naruto. Even though time didn't pass within the glowing orb, and to him, it was just a few seconds after Mavis created the sphere. Only a few seconds? Kakashi's eyes widened in surprise. And that is some seriously ridiculous powerful spell. Jiraiya shook his head with a small chuckle. He could still feel the time around him pass lazily. Seriously, just how powerful this kid can possibly become? Tsunade asked out loud. And that young man was lying on the ground with both hands behind his head, looking at the sea outside the sphere with his eyes half lifted, a bored expression on his face. Well, sound familiar? Ino giggled slyly as she turned her head to look at her most lazy teammate, who groaned and scratched the back of his head with his eyes half lifted. Shikamaru, I think you rubbed him with your laziness. Asuma chuckled mirthfully while patting his student's back. At this, everyone chuckled at Shikamaru, who muttered something under his breath before saying his trademark words troublesome. He was a handsome young man around the age of 19 to 20, with spiky blonde hair and bright azure blue eyes, 3 whisker marks on each cheek. He was also rather tall and has a lean, yet muscular build. He was wearing a black uniform-style jacket with an orange zipper that features several buttons on the waist and sleeves, allowing him to fold up the left sleeve and rear coattails, giving him easy access to the pouches on the back of his belt. He wore a red armband with the crest of Fairy Tail on his left arm. Most kunoichi, married or not, blushed brightly when they finally saw Naruto's appearance from the scene. Kushina, meanwhile, smiled at her son with pride and leaned on Minato's shoulder. Such a fine young man he has become, hasn't he, Minato? Kushina said softly, and the yellow flash of Konoha couldn't stop himself from nodding in agreement at his wife's words. I do have a feeling that we will have a Casanova here, Kiba whispered to his teammate, Shino, who only nodded his head. 2 whales, the young man muttered, mostly to himself. Mating season already? He wondered out loud. He then yawned loudly and then blinked twice when he saw the first master of fairy tale stood above him. Wait, hold on. Ino decided to interfere as she suddenly noticed something very strange in the first chapter. It was stated that Makarov-san was the 3rd master of fairy tale, while Mavis is the 1st master of fairy tale. Then everyone widened their eyes at that revelation. Could it be that she's an immortal too? Tenten asked. I believe we'll find out soon enough. Looking down at him with a smile, you're blocking the sun, Mavis. You do know that we're underneath the sea? Naruto, the 1st guild master, smiled at him. We can't see the sun here. It was actually kind of dark inside the sphere. He changed, didn't he? Sasuke asked, closing his eyes. Indeed, there is many differences in the way he talks and carries himself. Kakashi nodded with an eyes smile. Time can do many things, even to the loudest kind of people. Tobirama nodded his head with a smile. The cloud as well, Naruto chuckled, closing his eyes. How long? 7 minutes, Mavis said with her head titled to the side. 7 minutes for 7 years, those brats' bond is really something. Naruto nodded his head. Good for them. So, the stronger the bond, the greater the sphere. Minato nodded his head. 7 minutes for 7 years, from the way Naruto is saying that, I can tell that their bond is something very impressive. It's not just magic that is magical. Hashirama smiled. The bonds and faiths of fairy tale are becoming stronger and stronger with each generation, Mavis said softly, closing her eyes. All of those thoughts allowed one of the 3 great fairy magic, fairy sphere, to be activated. Their will and faith of each other become an absolute defense magic. It has become such a wonderful guild. You know, I have the same feeling when I first heard about Konoha after all those years. Hashirama smiled brightly as he looked at the next generation of his pride village, the ones that inherited the will of fire and would soon pass it down to the next generation of Leaf Shinobi and Kunoichi. It is, Shodame-sama, it is. The Sandame Hokage smiled before continuing his reading. Good for them, Naruto smiled and repeated his words before sitting up. Hey Mavis, there, but his eyes widened in surprise when the spirit of the 1st master of fairy tale wrapped her arms around his neck. Thank you, Naruto, for protecting them, she whispered softly. Even though Mavis was just a spirit, she couldn't touch him, but he could still feel the warmness from her. The Kunoichi cooed warmly at such scene between Naruto and Mavis, which appeared on the flat scene TV to show it to everyone. Their similarities in hair and eyes colors made them look like biological brother and sister. Minato and Kushina also smiled, but inside they couldn't help but feel a little sad, wondering if they were alive and tried for another child, perhaps a daughter, would that be the scene that they would see every day? A spirit, so she is already dead then? Tobirama said to his brother. It's clear that she's not a spirit. Don't ruin the mood, Tobirama. Hashirama chuckled loudly, making his brother give him a glare. Heh, don't mention it. Naruto smiled and stood up, his shoulder passed through Mavis' ethereal body. There is a ship approaching. I think it time you bring my island to the sea again, and he walks away. Line break. Natsu, get a hold of yourself, Jet and Droy said while trying to pull the pink-haired salamander from the ground, as half of his body was covered in earth. Natsu! Wake up, you bastard! Warren cried out. That's clearly not the way to wake someone up, the Godame Mizuki said while shaking her head. What? Shut up! Natsu roared and busted himself of the ground, ready to fight. Why, I believe we have found another, pink-haired version of our current Naruto here. Jiraiya laughed loudly, a noisy brat who blindly fight first and think later. The closest people to Naruto, such as Kakashi and Iruka, nodded their head in agreement with a long sigh. Natsu! Wah! Jet, Warren and Droy threw themselves on him with their arms wrapped around Natsu's neck, much to his shock. What the hell happened? The pink-haired boy wondered out loud. Why did you guys come here? He then widened his eyes in shock. And by the way, did you age a bit? And Droy got fat too? He cried out and pointed at the chubby boy standing next to Jet, his eyes as wide as dinner plates. 7 years did pass, after all. Minato chuckled, but to the people on Tenru, it's only 7 minutes. It must be a lot for them to handle once they got back to the civilization. You haven't changed at all, the 3 cried out of happiness with tears flowing down their cheeks. We just got attacked by Magnolia, and a golden guy came and turned into a massive fox with black markings, he said, trying to recall his memories. His eyes then snapped open. What about everyone else? He summarized everything in one sentence. Sakura chuckled nervously while everyone burst out in laughter. We really did have another version of Naruto here. I know, right? Jiraiya laughed. Right here, Mavis said softly, earning the attention from the group. Who are you? Droy asked in surprise. My name is Mavis, Fairy Tail's first master, Mavis Vermilion, she introduced, making the Fairy Tail group to cry out in absolute shock. I would probably do the same if I see a ghost. A random kunoichi said, and her friend nodded in agreement. She then slowly turned around and walked away, leading them to the spots where the other members of Fairy Tail were. The guild gathered in front of Mavis, with their eyes wide in surprise at the presence of Fairy Tail First Master, the one that was supposed to pass away a very long time ago. They also saw an unfamiliar young man lying on the ground at the other side of the rock Mavis was standing on, his hands clapped together behind his head, looking uncared about what the guild was saying. He changed a lot. Tsunade said in surprise. I don't think I can recognize him anymore. That wasn't just maturity, Tsunade. Tobarama shook his head at his grandniece. Time can do multi-things to people, especially when he is the only one who continued to live while the laws of nature take away everything he cares about. He made sure to say it with a low tone so only a few people could hear, because he didn't want to make Naruto's parents, especially his mother, to get more worry about him. What Naozo the First protect us, Makarov said through tears, smiling at the young woman with long golden hair. No, I am just an ethereal body. Since I converted everyone's strength into magic, I had to give it my all. Mavis smiled with her eyes closed. Unwavering faith and resilient bonds will bring even miracles to your side. She then looked at them and smiled with her head tilted to the side. It's becoming a wonderful guild, Sandaime. That is some really wise words for someone so young. The Sandaime Hokage said in surprise. During the time when he was still the Hokage of the Leaf and alive, only Itachi Uchiha had shown such wisdom when he was still very young. I don't think she is that young. Kakashi said she is a spirit, after all. Naruto looked at the ground and smiled softly. This really brought back some memories about a certain old man that took care of him when he was young. Minato and Kushina both smiled at Hiruzen, who returned with a fatherly smile and a nod of his head. Young man, the third master of Fairy Tail turned to Naruto and asked with a kind tone, wasn't you the one who defended us against Agnologia's roar attack? He recognized his voice and his feature, even though he looked very different from how he was during Agnologia's released its roar attack. Yeah, appear like a god and defeat a dragon, way to go, Naruto. Kiba groaned out loudly at the thought. He turned and looked at them. Everyone was looking at him, their eyes widened slightly. Naruto wasn't surprised by this kind expression at all, since Magnolia was currently one of the strongest beings here at Earthland, going toe-to-toe, and even actually sent him away. Something that even a whole guild worked together still couldn't manage to do wasn't something that you would see every day. So, that dragon weighs only off the strongest around? Tobarama said. I clearly don't want to see the strongest. Yes, so? Naruto spoke up. I thank you for what you had done, Makarov said, bowing his head low to Naruto. If it was not for you, we would. Save it, Naruto cut him off with an emotionless tone. Did you know that even without me take out most of that blast, Tenrajima would be still protected by Fairy Sphere? He then looked away. I didn't think that your bond would be strong enough to defend you, that's all. Did I really hear that right? Tenten gasped in surprise. He changed so much, didn't he? No matter how many times they asked that question, it would never get old. They could no longer recognize their beloved knucklehead hero. Hard to believe I would live to see this day. Asuma sighed longingly. For some reason, I think we got an emo version of Naruto now. A Naruto with Sasuke's personalities, who could have known? Jiraiya chuckled while shaking his head. What the hell do you mean by that? Natsu cried out. My, he is like the old Naruto. It's like seeing himself when he was younger. Hiruzen said with a smirk, as he remembered the times when Naruto was still running around the village, pulling pranks and going all happy with his cheerful personalities, despite the heat glares and cold shoulders the villagers gave him. Natsu Lucy spoke up instantly, warning him. Can I ask what your name is? Urza asked calmly, stepping up a little. Why need to know? His name is Naruto Uzumaki, Mavis said cheerily with her eyes sparkled in excitement, and he is a mage of Fairy Tail too. They all gasped at Mavis' announcement. So I guess that is why he is going to be called Fairy Guardian. Kushina smiled fondly because he protects them, the fairies. With the way he is now, I doubt it is going to happen again anytime soon. Way to bust the bubble, brat, Naruto said loudly. Awesome! Natsu cheered out in excitement. Much to Naruto's amusement, we have someone as strong as you in our guild. You're a Fairy Tail's mage? Laxus said in shock. He was after all one of the oldest member of the current younger generation, and yet he'd never seen Naruto before, and he was actually looked no older than him, maybe even younger, but I'd never seen you joining our guild before. I stay here most of my life, Naruto said shortly. Mavis taught me how to create a magical guild mark, so I make one. He grabbed a rock and threw it straight to the lake in front of him. It jumped on the water surface for a few times before sinking. It wasn't a lie, only part of the truth. A half-lie isn't a lie or the truth either, Tobarama said proudly, foreseeing the new generation wasn't as bad as he thought. By the time they realized what the guild mark capable of, they would start to question his power. There is something magical about that mark too? Probably there's some secret about it. Shino stoically replied to his teammate's question. I think it is understandable. The third master nodded his head. I think it time for us to return to fairy tale, he said to his children, and Natsu cheered out while everyone smiled brightly. Naruto, do you want to come with us? A mage of fairy tale was a mage of fairy tale. No matter the way you joined or where you were the family member of each and every single other member of the guild. It's very wise of you to think that, Makarov Dreyer Hashirama said with a grin on her face. Fairy tale really consider each other like family, don't they? No thank you, I'm alright her, but he stopped when he saw Mavis once again stood above him while looking down at him with interest eyes. What do you want, Mavis? The girl only smiled to him. You want me to come with them, don't you? He asked again. This time a tick mark appeared on his forehead. Mavis nodded her head rapidly. Alright, then he stood up and walked toward Fairy Tale. You can't refuse anything from such a cutie like her, Ino cooed excitedly. While the women nodded with her, but most of the men groaned, but unconsciously they couldn't help but agree. Line break. As soon as the ship began to move, Natsu groaned with his hand covered his mouth as he stood at the sideline of the boat, his face green. Motion sickness? Natsu asked the nearest person standing next to him. Lucy, Dragon Slayer? Dragon Slayer? Kiba repeated in surprise. Excuse me, are you telling me that a dragon slayer couldn't kill a dragon? Seriously? That dragon is probably too powerful for any dragon slayers. Minato spoke up, but I do wonder, is motion sickness a unique trait of every dragon slayer? And from the look of it, it's rather bad. Kushina followed, making everyone chuckle lightly. So lame. A grumbled. Yes, she nodded her head before turning to the other dragon slayer. All of them are really bad with transportation, save for Wendy. That little blue hair is also a dragon slayer? Ino asked in shock. What the hell? Did she really slay a dragon before? I don't think that is the point. Young Yamanaka, the second Hokage, shook his head. I believe dragon slayer is something akin to a title, or at least, they are the mages that wield the power to slay a dragon. In our stories alone, dragon is a very powerful being, so there must be a special kind of magic to defeat. Naruto nodded, looking at the girl who was running back and forth using her magic to heal the injured member of Fairy Tail. A healer? Tsunade smiled along with her two students. Good thing that we still have them around. I didn't thank you for saving us, Thank Like I said, no need for that. Naruto shook his head. Even without me, you guys would still get out alive anyway. Accept the credits, brat. Anoki groaned out. You deserve it. Around him, everyone nodded in agreement. But still a frown made it to Lucy's face, but then she smiled. I'm still grateful for what you did. I'm Lucy Heartfilia, nice to meet you. She offered him her hands. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto took it and shook Lucy's hands. You said you stayed on the island most of your life and joined there with the approval of the first. Lucy asked curiously. So, you never come to the guild before? Yeah, Naruto could only nod his head. What kind of magic do you use? I had never seen something else. Look, can we just stop this 10-question game? Naruto cut her off, making Lucy to look at him in surprise, and walked away with his hands in his pocket. How rude! Kushina pouted at her son's action. But you have to admit, being asked about your abilities like that can be annoying. It's best to keep the information for oneself just in case. Tobirama said. Keeping secrets from family and friends sucked, but it was the life ninjas had to live. How cold of him, Gray said. Appear next to Lucy. What's his problem anyway? I don't care. Where are your clothes? Lucy flinched and cried out in shock when she saw Gray stood next to her without a piece of clothes on his body. How did he manage to do that? He was with clothes on a few minutes ago. Everyone thought with a sweat dropped. Naruto walked to the end of the ship and looked at Tenryjima, the island that was his home after he decided to stay away from this world. He didn't know what Mavis was thinking, but she was a very wise girl and knew what was good for him. Like a wife, Jiraiya said while wiggling his eyebrows. No, like a sister. Tsunade corrected him, bringing her fist up to let him know that any pervert thought, and it would connect with his face. For now, he would stick to the guild and see how it goes. After all, after so many things he heard about Fairy Tail in the past, maybe stick to them for some time wouldn't be too bad after all. And that is the end of this chapter. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. And that is the end of this chapter. The Sandaime Hokage smiled. Who want to read next? He asked, looking around. I will, Sarutobi-sama. Minato offered his hand and took the book from his predecessor's hands. Minato opened the book and flipped to the third chapter before reading it out loud for everyone to hear. X791 Magnolia. X791? Kiba questioned with an amused tone as he turned to his teammate. It's a strange way to address a year, don't you think? The dark glasses, insects user Shinobi nodded his head in agreement. Can't help but wonder what happened 791 years ago. Hashirama spoke up before signaling for the fourth Hokage to read the book. By the time they came back from Tenru Island, 7 years had passed by in Earthland. I still can't believe the world is going to have such a powerful barrier like that. Kushina said. Being an Uzumaki, she understood Fuinjutsu better than shinobi or kunoichi within the place. She was the one who had learnt and used countless powerful seals for combat purposes, and yet she couldn't help but feel amazed at the power of Fairy Sphere. A magic that covers everyone's bonds and faith into magic power. Sarutobi nodded his head, which alone can speak volume of how powerful bonds and faith are. Lucy looked around the guild and she couldn't help but smile a little. It felt like a fairy tale she read a long time ago, though she never thought she and everyone of the guild would end up in a situation exactly like that story. Wonder what story she is talking about. Ino mused. She got the feeling that she knew that story from the bedtime stories her mother used to tell her when she was a lot younger, but wasn't too sure, so the Yamanaka's heiress decided to keep it to herself. Last night, the guild got a massive party to celebrate the return of the core members of Fairy Tail, and even if she wanted to, Lucy would never be able to forget any moments of that night. Drinking, singing and dancing as if they were making up for 7 years of lost time, Fairy Tail was no longer the best guild of Earthland, yet it was still pretty much the same as before. Everyone, laughing and smashing their fists into each other's face, before wrapping their arms around each other's shoulder, tears of joy falling down their eyes. Well, Jiraiya chuckled. That's a way of celebrating, isn't it? Everyone nodded his head in agreement and laughed at the thought of such party, where everything went chaos. They have 7 years to catch up to with each other, after all. Kakashi nodded with an eye smile. It might be only a few minutes for the core members of Fairy Tail, but for the rest in the world, it's 7 years straight. They must be really happy to meet each other again. But still, why do I have a feeling that there is a but in this? Sasuke spoke up and Sakura nodded her head in agreement. Everyone. Except for one only person. See? The Uchiha shrugged. It's Naruto, no doubt about it. Everyone nodded their head in agreement, and Kushina looked at the book sadly, wondering if there was any way for her son to return to his current self she heard so much about from the others and her husband. Naruto Uzumaki once again at his personal space, completely separated from the other. He got a table for himself at a corner of the room. He didn't drink any cup of beer Mira gave him or try to interact with everyone. He just sat there, remained silent all night until the morning. Well shit, the emo level has reached a whole new level. Jiraiya gasped slightly in surprise before turning to look at Sasuke. Sorry kid, he really doesn't have your personalities, he has worse. Like I said, time could do a lot of things to people. Tobirama stated calmly. Immortality does come with a price. You might live forever, but the ones you care about will pass away normally when their time comes. He must have lost all hope in the living. Mavis must have seen this. His brother, the first Hokage, continued after him. Before the atmosphere could become any worse, it must be the reason why she wants Naruto to come with Fairy Tail. Just look at them, the way they act around each other, the way they bond with each other. I believe if there are anyone out there, in the future, that can help Naruto to believe in other, it's Fairy Tail. Let's just hope that thing will swing that way. But most of the members of the guild were too lost into the fun to acknowledge the blonde, who also appeared to be very grateful if they don't try to. For someone who lived most his life seeking for attention, Irika stated it's like he has become a complete different person. Agree. Kakashi nodded his head. After all, he had been there to witness Naruto's grown, from a boy who wanted nothing more than being acknowledged by everyone, to the hero that the entire world came to love and respect. It saddened him to see his beloved student would turn out like that. The fun continued until the doors of the small guild building was opened and 5 very familiar faces walked in with a smile on their face. Welcome back, everyone. Sherry Blendy waved to them cheerfully. She was a young beautiful woman with blue eyes, pink hair, large breasts, and a curvaceous body. She wore a black vest top and matching skirt. The vest sported a collar and tied reaching only to her mid-chest, and aside from a light cloth band clasped above her navel, her belly and the under-inside portion of her breasts were exposed. She also wore a dark hairband with points resembling cat ears, and long black gloves reaching to her upper arms. Well, Jiraiya chuckled with a lecherous smile. Damn. He could only stare, with blood tricked down from his nose, at another amazing figure. Why are they so hot? Leave him. Tsunade sighed in defeat. While the way he was acting wasn't something she would approve, even in the next million years, he did a really good job in lightening up the mood and brought a laughter back to the alliance. Looks like it's turned back into a noisy guild. The one who said that was Lion Vastia. He was a slim young man of average height with a muscular and toned body. He had bluish silver hair, most of which were spiky strands that jut upwards on top of his head, except for some which are kept pointing down and partially cover the upper left part of his face. The boys are so dreamy too. Some of the younger kunoichi squealed out in delight. Behind him were Juranikis, Yuka Suzuki and Tobi Horhorda, all them wearing a smile on their face as they greeted the mist mages of Fairy Tail. Okay, so maybe not all the boys. The men couldn't help but sweat drop at that. And when I thought their Guy-sensei and Lee have the worst eyebrow possible. Tenten winced in disgust at large and long Yuka's eyebrow. You guys, Gray said in shock, standing up from his seat. Lamia Scale Lucy gasped. It had been a long time since she last saw them, as they were Fairy Tail's alliance during the battle against one of the strongest Dark Guild of Balam Alliance, Oration Cease. So, bad guys and their not-so-little occasions will be still around in the future. I grumbled, tightening his hands into fists. Good thing that the kids are going to have each other back, unlike us a few years before the Fourth Shinobi War. Yeah, our villages didn't get along well before that, even during the final meeting before heading to war. Mei Terumi nodded her head in agreement. When we're searching for Tenru Island, Blue Pegasus and Lamia really helped us out, one of the guild's members informed them, forcing Gray to make a forced smile as Lion smirk. Looks like we're in their debt now. Don't worry about it, Blue Pegasus made it out there first, but we have much more power, Lion smirked confidently. Who cares about that? Gray sweat dropped, saying uncaringly. Well, I do have a feeling that these two had quite a history with each other, haven't they? Well, in these past 7 years, we Lamia Scale have climbed up to the number 2 guild in Fiori, Sherry said with a smile, putting her hand to the above of her sizable chest. Too bad for you, Lucy-san. Only number 2? Kiba asked in surprise. So who is the number 1 then? Blue Pegasus? Nah, I don't think so. Ino shook her head and Sakura nodded in agreement. So does that mean number 1 is Blue Pegasus? Lucy asked. Of course not. Toby cried. There's no way that could happen. See? Kiba nodded while muttering something about woman and their institution under his breath. Settle down, Yuka calmed his friend with his usual expression. No, it's not Blue Pegasus. Well, enough about that. Jura nodded his head. What's important is that everyone is okay. His eyes then caught the young man who was sitting by himself at a corner of the guild hall, which was very strange considered what kind of a guild Fairy Tail was. So he couldn't help but ask, and who is that young man over there? I have never seen him before, have I? Damn, that place must be noisy all the time. Anko whispered in amazement. Yeah, only one person doesn't act like them and he's immediately noticed by the others. Kurenai agreed with her best friend. Or Fairy Tail was just that popular. They used to be the number 1 guild of Fiori, didn't they? Immediately the guild became silent, uncomfortable silence, making the mages of Lamia Scale widen their eyes slightly at that. Naruto, however, completely ignored the silence and continued to mind his own business, by closing his eyes and sitting completely still. Is he mediating? Jiraiya turned his head to ask Sasuke. The brat can use senjutsu, right? Maybe he's mediating and becoming one with nature. Completely still was the usual words he and the Sannin used whenever they were talking about senjutsu and natural energy, as well as the way to absorb it into one's body. Possible, but for what reason? Sasuke nodded his head and stated calmly. Plus, I don't think Naruto needs to stay completely still to absorb natural energy anymore. He can go into that Sannin mode almost instantly, can he? The Toad Sannin widened his eyes in surprise at that. Damn, that brat is quite something. He then turned to Kushina and gave her a thumb up. Good work, Kushina. He grinned broadly at her, and Kushina could only nod her head in response, but she did have a proud smile on her face. Did I say something wrong? Jura asked, looking around. No, not at all, Jura-san. Lucy shook her head with a nervous smile. It's just that Naruto is not very sociable. We met him on the island. Makarov spoke up. He was drinking a cup of beer. From what he told us, he had been staying there for quite some time now and joined Fairy Tail long ago. Oh, is that so? Lion nodded his head. This is kind of new, don't you think? He turned around and asked Sherry, who couldn't help but nod her head. He is just shy, that's all, Mira said with a small smile, holding a tray with a couple of cups of beer on top of it, though she wasn't too sure herself when she said that. Naruto? Shy. Irika made a small laugh after that. I don't think Naruto's name and the word shy could ever go alongside with each other. Unless we're talking about Hinata. Kakashi pointed out with a slight chuckle. But Hinata is not that shy anymore. Sakura decided to defend her friend by stepping in the conversation between their sensei. Sure, she's still blushing around him, but she has some huge improvement in her confidence, you know. Oh, sorry. Kakashi laughed while scratching the back of his head. Don't mind me, Minato-sense, please continue. But he's super powerful. Natsu suddenly appeared in front of Lamia Scale's group and said with a cheerful smile. He stopped a dragon breath attack by, but before he could finish that sentence a table dashed on the ground suddenly appeared and slammed into him, sending the poor pink-haired boy across the room before crashing into the wall. Well? Some of the ninja chuckled and smiled while Sakura was saying that. Guess who did that? How rude of him. Kushina huffed and crossed her arms on her chest. If I was there, I'm sure I will. But before his wife could go any further, Minato decided to carry on. All had turned to the other side of the room and saw Naruto standing there with his feet raised a little. After seeing him sitting for all night and all day in the same position, this of course was a surprise for the Fairy Tail's members. The bastard will make a fine hermit someday, won't he? Kiba laughed, but he knew that Naruto could no longer age to the age he could become a full of experience old geezer. I would like to keep that information for myself, thank you very much. A true shinobi. Tobirama nodded his head firmly. After that many years, I see that he's still carrying the legacy of our era. Well, Hashirama looked at his brother for a second before turning to Minato. Ignore him, carry on Yondaime. Tobirama could only make a face at his older brother's words. He spoke up with a lazy tone, putting the picture he was holding into his pocket. Everyone couldn't help but look up in interest at the mention of that picture, and couldn't stop wondering who was on that picture he was keeping with him. He grabbed another free table and pulled it toward him, putting both of his feet on it, and leaned back slightly against his chair. What? Naruto asked when he saw that everyone was looking at him. How cold. Ino shuddered at the thought of a Naruto like that, especially after she had spent so many years getting used to the cheerful and hot-headed Naruto. So you get the idea, Makarov said to Jura, of all the kids in Fairy Tail's younger generation, which he believed Naruto to be a part of them since he didn't look any older than 19. Wait, Minato. Kushina held up her hand to signal her husband to stop before speaking up. Naruto's 19 now, right? She asked worriedly, and many people widened their eyes in realization. So it's going to happen in a few months or weeks? Sakura asked in shock. I don't think so. Hashirama suddenly spoke up after spending some time thinking about it. Remember that Uzumaki's life force is very powerful. Naruto could look 19 for 20 years, 30 years, or maybe more. I met Mito when she was 50-year-old, and she didn't look a day older than mid-20s. Don't worry, Kushina. Minato squealed his wife's hand and said comfortingly, our son is going to be alright. He can take care of himself, you know. But his words didn't make the red-haired woman any less worried for her son, and could only nod in response so her husband could carry on with the story. The blonde was the hardest to read and to understand. If he didn't know any better, he would think that Naruto wasn't a part of their guild, and didn't want to be a part of it. But he trusted the first decision. After all, she was one of the founders of Fairy Tail, a very wise young woman. If she said Naruto was Fairy Tail's mage, then Naruto was Fairy Tail's mage. Now I really want to meet this girl. Tsunade spoke in amazement. She just seems to be too smart for her age, don't you think? She was one of the founders of Fairy Tail, and while she's simply a spirit, she could create one of the most powerful barrier we have ever seen. Tobirama nodded his head at his grandniece's words, not to mention even Naruto, an immortal who lived many thousands years, in the last chapter made a compliment about her wisdom. I believe that she can also see into his heart, and realize the person he truly is as well. Sarutobi said after his predecessor, a fearsome young woman, isn't she? To most people, fearsome was still a huge understatement. After that, Lamia Scale left Fairy Tail and everyone soon returned to drink with each other. There is a line break right here, Minato informed them before continuing. Beer? Mira walked up to him and asked cheerily. At first, when she brought those cups to him, she didn't say anything to him because she afraid that he would get angry or something like that, but now when he finally talked something, even if it was just a few words, she could comfortably communicate with him. What a bastard! Kiba commented. I would definitely ask a girl like that out if she invited me for a drink. Well, I would like to see you try, mud boy. His sister, Hannah, teased him with a pat on the back. So, barely a week there and he already has a fan? Jiraiya giggled perversely. Good for him then. I don't think Mira is that type of girl, Jiraiya. Tsunade showed her former teammate her fist, daring him to make any comment or objection. Tsuna is right. Hashirama nodded his head with a smile. I think she's also a bartender or waitress or something like that. No thank you, Naruto replied shortly, making the smile on Mira's face disappeared. That's not how you talk to a girl, Naruto. Kushina groaned, holding her head at the way Naruto was acting. What an asshole! One of the shinobi from Kumo spoke up, and many agreed with him. Oh, then would you like to drink anything? Instantly the smile returned to her face, and she tried to make him open up once again. You must be thirsty. Naruto turned to Mira and stared at her for a moment before sighing. With just a glance he could tell that Mira would never stop bothering him until she got what she wanted. Finally, Naruto's mother smiled, exhaling a long breath she didn't know she had been holding. A cup of water should be fine, Naruto said, and Mira smiled brightly at that. She quickly ran away and found an empty cup to get Naruto some water. Excited, isn't she? You don't drink? Gildart spoke to Naruto, following Mira's example of trying to interact with him. Not that I have anything against it, but you don't seem like the clean type boy to me, young man. Oh hell no, Kiba shook his head with a wide smirk. That guy drink, and he can hold his liquor very well. The shinobi of his generation, including Choji, nodded their head in agreement, as they could remember the last time they saw Naruto drink. The Akimichi once challenged Naruto for a drinking contest, but it didn't end well for him because Naruto was completely fine no matter how many cups of sake he drank during that contest. It's because of the Kyuubi, or Karama. Kushina explained Jinchuriki cannot get drunk because their Biju's chakra increased the metabolic rate to at least 4 or 5 times stronger than normal human, so the alcohol cannot affect us unless we drink 5 times faster than usual. Oh. His daughter, however, was completely opposite, because she was drinking from a whole barrel of beer, holding her liquor even better than him, her father. Bad luck for him then. Asuma chuckled while smoking on his cigar. A whole barrel? Shizen said in shock. She's even worse than Tsunade-sama. The Godame huffed and turned her head away, crossing her arms beneath her gigantic chest, and chose to ignore her assistant's words. I drink, yes, Naruto said, taking the cup of water from Mira, but to me, beer the same as a cup of water. I can't get drunk, so what is the point of drinking in the first place? Well, we can enjoy the taste, actually. Yujito, the former Jinchuriki of Nibi no Nikomata, spoke up for the first time. Naruto said shortly and gulped down the water in one gulp. Thank you. He handed it back to the beautiful white-haired girl. What's your name, by the way? That's right, ask her name and flirt with her brat. Jiraiya giggled perversely. Next thing we know it, he'll bed this girl for sure. Geez, he has a girlfriend, you know. Tsunade scolded. I'm Mira Jane Strauss. Mira introduced herself with a smile. Take over magic? Naruto asked, making Mira widen her eyes in surprise before nodding her head. Demons, I suppose? Interesting, the Naidame Hokage thought while everyone listened on. You can tell? Makarov asked in interest. He was sitting on the table beside Naruto's with a cup of beer in his hands. The third master of Fairy Tail was pretty drunk, but he was still in the right mind to acknowledge the surrounding about everyone's magic. So, I suppose that each one of them has their own magic. Sarutobi said. Natsu and Wendy use dragon-slaying magic, Fried uses magic that can create seal and barrier, and Myra's magic has something to do with demon. Interesting, isn't it? It's like their own bloodline limit, or something like that. Hashirama grinned. Wonder what the others' magic are, said Inoki. No, only Mira here. Naruto said. I can feel their emotions, the demon's emotion, coming from her. Of course, since demons aren't the friendliest ones, it is actually hard not to notice such a negative emotion coming from a cheerful young woman. She has demons living inside her? Kushina gasped in surprise. You don't think she's a Jinchuriki or something like that, don't you? Tenten asked worriedly, knowing full well how hard and horrible the life of a Jinchuriki was. I doubt that. Tobirama shook his head. Her magic is called takeover magic, so she must have the power to completely take over the demons, both mentally and physically, and use their power to fight. It was quite a magical magic, indeed. I see, Minato said before returning to the book. You can sense emotions? Gildart asked in surprise. Come to think of it, what is your magic anyway? Before Naruto could answer, Natsu suddenly leaped toward him with his fist covered in fire, trying to punch Naruto on the face. Naruto, however, already saw this coming and moved his head back a little, avoiding Natsu's punch at the last moment, making the pink-haired dragon slayer's fist to collide with the table. The hell is wrong with him? Kiba cried out in shock. Don't go around attack people like that. Most of the members of Fairy Tail screamed out in a dramatic manner, pointing their hands at Natsu. I take that it happens pretty often then, Kakashi mused, while scratching his chin, appearing to be deep in thought. He's just like a mini, pink-haired version of Naruto. Tsunade sighed while shaking her head, as she could still remember how immature her godson was when he was younger. Natsu, Urza said out loudly with a stern tone. What do you think you are doing? Lucy already told me that you don't want to tell us your magic. Natsu stood up, punching his palm with fire flared around his body, grinning with a confident expression on his face. So I guess I will just have to force you to spill it out then. He pointed at Naruto. I challenge you to a fight, he declared proudly. At least he could say that before trying to punch him, Kushina pointed out. Do first, talk later? Sakura giggled softly. Sound familiar, guys? The rookie nine all busted out in laughter immediately after that. Nah, not interest was Naruto's answer to the challenge. With the way Naruto was, no one was surprised by his reply and even expecting him to make a response like that. What? Natsu roared out. I'm challenge you right here. Not even Urza answered it like that. Even though she always win, Happy added in with his trademark gesture. Well, at least we have some capable girl around to keep that kind of boy in check. Tsunade smiled fondly, and many kunoichi nodded their head in agreement. Okay then. Natsu roared and his magic flared powerfully. I will force you to fight me then. And charged at Naruto, who only turned his head to look at Natsu. Well, I don't think he is going to dodge, Tobirama said. With that kind of opponent, Naruto can easily take him out by overwhelming his will to fight. Just wait for it. Even though Urza and even Makarov wanted to stop Natsu from attacking another guildmate inside of the guild, which was already too small for a fight in the first place, they couldn't help but hold their breath and try not to blink in order to fully see what Naruto would do. They all agreed that the young man over there was powerful, too powerful for someone so at his age. Not even Gildart, the ace of Fairy Tail, could match a corner of the power of the mighty Dragon King, and yet Naruto managed to send the beast away and negated one of its strongest attacks with his own. Little did they know that the rest of the guild was also thinking the same, especially the one who was there to witness his power. Then suddenly, when Natsu's fist was about to collide with Naruto's face, the pink-haired boy suddenly stopped dead in his track. Smooth. Kiba grinned. I don't want to admit it out loud but hate to be in that pink-haired guy's shoe. There is nothing to be ashamed about, young Inuzuka. Hashirama smiled. Silence. Before their eyes widened in shock when Natsu began to sweat uncontrollably. His eyes slowly widened and fear made it to his face, as if he just saw something terrifying. Why you? Natsu stuttered before he collapsed to his knees. Poor guy, Kiba smirked. Hopefully he isn't going to shit his pants right there. He must be a hot-headed boy, but I don't think he is that weak-minded. Kiba, Kurenai said to her student and placed a hand on his shoulder. He fought against the dragon after all. Like I said. Naruto turned back to his table, saying lazily as Natsu put a hand on his chest, trying to catch his breath, not interest. He defeated Natsu by staring at him? Jet gasped in shock. What the hell? Gray muttered in shock. So it has never happened before? Sakura asked in surprise. Well, I really doubt that, was the only reply she got. Gildart gulped slightly at that. He didn't know what Naruto just do, but clearly it was more than enough to put the incredible brave salamander of Fairy Tail down to his knees, something that had only happened once before when he decided that he would no longer go easy on him. From Naruto, he didn't even feel a slight burst of magical energy nor he saw his body move. All he did was sit there and, like Jet said, stared at Natsu. Have enough yet? Naruto asked, glancing down the spot where Natsu was at. You're strong, the dragon slayer of Fairy Tail said with a wide smirk, glancing up to Naruto. Booty won't lose to you. Oh ho! That's some gut he has there. The first Hokage said excitedly, with a large smile on his face. This boy is quite something, isn't he? He has gut, and the will to never give up. Jiraiya smiled fondly with a nod of his head, just like our Naruto. Ho! Everyone widened their eyes when they saw Naruto's lips curled up a little in a small smirk, the first expression they had ever seen on him other than emotionless and laziness. Nice eyes you got here, kid. Kid? Natsu asked before exploding. What the hell do you mean, kid? I'm no older than you, bastard. But he was immediately held back by Lucy and Gray. So Lucy must be like a bustier Sakura-chan, and Gray is a friendlier and more youthful version of Sasuke-kun, Lee said while scratching his chin, causing both Sakura and Sasuke to glare at him for comparing them like that. Well, Team 7 assembled. Now we only need Kakashi-sensei in the team as well. Shut up, Natsu! Urza appeared next to him and quickly knocked him out, with a punch to the head. Grabbing the scarf of the unconscious boy, she turned to Naruto and said with an apologetic tone, my deepest apology, Naruto, he is rather immature for his age. And we have a rather violent version of Kakashi-sensei right there as well. Everyone's sweat dropped while Kakashi could only laugh nervously. More like Tsunade, if you asked me, Jiraiya whispered to Minato and Kushina, who clearly didn't know how to respond. Don't worry, the kid reminded me of myself when I was young. You have no idea, Naruto. Naruto shook his head, the smirk on his face turned into a small smile. He got gut and will, that's all he needs to grow strong. So true. Though, a certain snake-faced Sannin wouldn't agree to that. True. Makarov nodded his head. Naruto Uzumaki turned out to be more mysterious than they thought. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Naruto Uzumaki turned out to be more mysterious than they thought. Minato read before announcing, well, that's the end of this chapter. Who want to read next? Kakashi raised his hand and accepted the book from his teacher. That was a very interesting chapter. We got to learn so much about the future. Hashirama smiled fondly at the thought of Fairy Tail, and their strong bond. One can't wait to see more. We will, Shodame-sama. His student, the Sandaime Hokage, said with a nod of his head. I believe that's the reason we're here, to learn about Fairy Tail and young Naruto's journey with them. But I don't think we can call him young anymore. Asuma shook his head, sighing heavily. I hope they'll be able to change him. Kushina said softly. I don't want Naruto to continue to act like this. No one does, Kushina. Minato held his wife's hand. Let's just listen to the next chapter, shall we? The red-head Uzumaki looked at her husband before nodding her head. And with that, Kakashi started reading. Fairy Tail. Makarov stepped out of his office with a mission request in his hands. We have a new mission. The mages bellow, save for Naruto, cheered out loudly from hearing the announcement from the guild master. So, they still accept missions just like us. Jiraiya nodded his head. The system is not that much different, it seems. Yes, but I don't think these kind of people will be willing to take the most serious requests, like assassinations. Tobirama stated calmly. Because of the absence of the core members of Fairy Tail, the guild was dethroned from the #1 position a few years ago and became the weakest guild among the mage guilds of Fiori. Ah, I get it. Mei Terumi said, smiling. They're having the same problem as we were before I took the position of Godame Mizukage. Because of the bloody misreputation, only the worst kinds of missions were sent to us, and we rarely had anything to do back at those days. It was really hard for us to keep our income, so I understand. A kunoichi of the mist, who had gone through the bloody era of her village, commented her thoughts out loud. I hope they will start doing fine from now on, now that the core members are back. It was Ino who said that, and Sakura nodded in agreement. Missions were rarely sent to Fairy Tail nowadays, especially missions from A-class and S-class with high payments. Even the old ranking system is still there. Tsunade was surprised. From the lowest and easiest D-rank mission, to the hardest and highest S-class mission. The second Hokage concluded, so I assume there are rankings among the mage as well. It's not like the weak and inexperienced mage can take on top-class missions, can't they? Most of the remaining missions were finished by Team Natsu. Team Natsu? Jiraiya chuckled. That brat got his own team? Now who want to bet who are in that team? Urza, Lucy and Gray. Kiba immediately jumped in without taking a second to think. Probably Happy too, but does a cat count? Probably. And the returned, stronger members of Fairy Tail. So around this time there was no more mission on the guild's mission board, even on the S-class board on the second floor. And of course, every member of the guild was seriously in need for money. Mine! Natsu cried out and leaped forward, trying to get the mission request paper from the master's hands. Era, I don't know, it's that bad. May slightly gasped in surprise while the others just laughed. Forget it. That's mine! Jet cried out and shot forward with his magic bumping into his legs. Oh no you don't! Kana pulled out 3 cards and they began to glow with magic. Magic cast with cards? Shizen stated in surprise. That's new. I suppose we're going to learn a lot more about the magic of the future, Shizen. Her teacher smiled and put a hand on Shizen's shoulders. So don't feel so surprised. Yes, Tsunade-sama. Naruto sighed. Seriously, he's like a combination of Shikamaru and Sasuke, only 10 times worse. Kiba pointed out, and a few who knew those two just couldn't stop themselves from agreeing. There they go again, Naruto thought inside of his head while sipping a cup of orange juice. He didn't know what was so interesting about this guild that Mavis wanted him to come with them, but apparently it was interesting enough to make him stick around. Ah, that's good to hear. Kushina smiled fondly at the thought. For the past week Naruto had considered about leaving the place numerous times, but every time he came to this guild something new happened and he couldn't help but come to the place every morning, though he would never admit it out loud. Admit it, bastard. It's not youthful at all to do that, Naruto-kun. Lee cried out after Kiba. As much as I don't want to say it, he's right. Tobirama nodded, crossing his arms on his chest. Be honest to yourself is always the first step to become a true shinobi. The whole guild then broke out in a massive fight, just like the last time a mission request arrived at the guild master's office. So basically anyone can accept and go on that mission as long as they're the one who have it. It's not actually strategic wise. The younger Senju said after his brother. I believe that like a shinobi, some mage are well suited for some certain mission than the other. Unless we're talking about a normal D rank or C rank mission, where you have to do a simple housework or escort someone through a forest, protecting him from wild animals. Urza let out a sigh in disappointment after finishing her favorite strawberry cheesecake and stood up from her seat. Oh, she's about to end the fight, isn't she? When she was present in the guild and not out doing mission with her team, the Scarlet Head Mage was always the one who won most of the missions for her team. More or less everyone was really afraid of her and didn't want to face her wrath. Seriously, I can't help but think that she's a perfect replica of Kushina, Tsunade said in amusement, and everyone burst out in laughter, while Kushina just pouted and crossed her hands on her chest's red head and their temple. I'm not that bad, am I, Minato-kun? She turned to Minato and tried to find some support from her beloved husband, but all he did was gulp slightly and scratch his cheek with a nervous expression on his face. Pissing Kushina, or to be more specific, a redhead, off was like a death sentence. But before she could make any move to stop the fight, the master raised his hand and took a deep breath before shouting out. Not the way I'm think, but it will work fine. Sarutobi chuckled. Enough. Instantly the guild stopped their fight and turned their head to look at the master. See? Many leaders like him chuckled. Ahem, now that everyone had calmed down, I have a few things to say before assigning this mission for a mage or a team. This is not a simple mission. His tone changed and became seriously. This is an S-class mission. Quite a few mages gasped out in shock. This was their first S-class mission in many years after the disappearance of the core members of Fairy Tail. Interesting. Tobirama muttered under his breath. It seems the core members of Fairy Tail are all very capable mages, Hashirama stated seriously. Make you wonder what were they doing on the island far from their home. Kakashi looked up from the book and got attacked by a dragon, and injured even before that. Yes. Natsu cheered. Give us that mission. Seriously, do you think that this guy is actually Naruto's descendant? Ino asked in amazement, while the others chuckled at her statement. Let me tell you, if Naruto and Hinata's kids are going to act like this, It's not going to be pretty for our village. Let's just hope my grandchildren are going to take after my daughter than him. Hayashi coughed into his hand, and of course, as Hinata's father he would like to have his grandchildren taking after his daughter more than their father. Ah, Hinata sounds so nice. I want to meet her already. Kushina smiled hopefully. So far, everything she heard about Hinata, from the stories Naruto's friends told her, to the way Hayashi said that, sounded so amazing to her. Team Natsu was the current one of the only 2 teams that had S-class mage in it. So you were right, Naidame-sama. There are rankings among the mage and S-class are the highest, the strongest. Konohamaru turned to the white-haired Senju, only they're allowed to accept that level of mission. It was just like them. Only the Jounin and most experienced shinobi in the village could accept S-class mission, the hardest and most dangerous mission, because only they had the powers to finish it and get out alive. Natsu and his team are all S-class mage? His friend, Moegi, said in surprise. I don't think so. Ebisu, their teacher, said while pushing his glass closer to his face. I believe one S-class mage is enough to bring the whole team with them. It's not necessary for the whole team to be S-class mage to go on one. Many shinobi agreed to his explanation, which caused the man to grin smugly. Who was none other than Titania Urza Scarlet, and the only chance any mage who wasn't S-class yet got the chance of doing the highest ranking missions was having at least an S-class mage accompany them. Urza is an S-class mage? Sakura gasped, but she wasn't that surprised. I think it's quite obvious for someone as capable and as responsible as she is. Tsunade smiled with a nod of her head. Unfortunately, Natsu, your team won't be the one who get this mission, Makarov said, making Team Natsu groan out in disappointment and the others to smirk. Wow, it must suck for them, don't you think? Kiba grinned. The master looked around for a moment before his eyes landed on a certain blonde-haired young man who was still separating himself from the guild's everyday activities. Oh, he's about to give it to Naruto, isn't he? Kushina smiled brightly at the mention of her son, once again. I believe he is, Kushina. Minato nodded his head, smiling at his wife. I think it's time for Naruto to get his first mission. All eyes turned to Naruto and he couldn't help but look at the master, with an unreadable expression on his face. Really? Naruto asked. Yes, you're a mage, right? Makarov asked with a smile. That mark on your hand showed that you're not just a mage, but a mage of fairy tales, so I think it's time you take a mission and start your career, fairy tale style. He finished with his smirk widened. Fairy tale style? So they have their own way of handling mission, don't they? Kiba smirked. The more I know these people, the more I like them. We all are. It was the first Hokage who commented. No thank you. Excuse me? Just wait a little, Kushina-sensei. Kakashi chuckled nervously and continued to read on before Naruto's mother could explode and show how bad her temper was. Everyone's face dropped instantly when they heard Naruto said that, but widened their eyes when they saw Naruto stood up from his seat. Give me that paper and I will finish that mission, but I will do it my way. See? The Rokudaime Hokage of Konoha said, and Kushina nodded her head with a satisfied smile. Makarov nodded his head with a smile before dropping the mission request down to Naruto, who caught it into his hand and read. But master, Naruto isn't an S-class mage yet. Urza spoke up. I mean, he is strong, yes, but isn't it illegal to have a normal mage goes on an S-class mission? So they must have some kind of promotion test to become an S-class mage, just like how we have to in order to become Chunin and then Jounin. Niji Hyuga voiced his thought out loud. He was the first of his generation to become Jounin, so he understood it better than anyone. I can see that. The second Hokage nodded his head in agreement. Of course, that is the reason why I will need an S-class mage to go on this mission with him, the guild master said before turning his eyes to a certain white-haired demon mage. Excuse me? Kiba exclaimed in shock. Are you really saying that that girl is actually an S-class mage? What the hell? Well, I guess the female of the future is living up to the past. Kushina crossed her arms on her chest and grinned smugly. Around the red-head Uzumaki, many kunoichi agreed with her, smirking in satisfaction. So far, the only S-class mage we know is Urza and Mira, and they're both female. Tsunade chuckled. Gildartsan is probably an S-class mage too, since he's Fairy Tail's ace, their strongest, she said, deciding to save the men some face. If Urza can scare the entire guild off, then I wonder just how powerful Mira Jane is. Beautiful and dangerous, these female mages have it all, haven't they? Jiraiya chuckled slyly. Who was rushing back and forth to serve beers to everyone present in the guild. Mira, would you like to go on this mission too? This made her stop and looked at the master in surprise. Me? Mira asked, pointing at herself. I'm not sure, master. This is also a great opportunity for you to get back to shape. Makarov grinned. Did something happen to her? Kushina asked in concern. There's a chance that she quit being a mage or something like that. Mira lost her power after her sister's supposed death. So their magic is affected by their emotions as well. Tobirama spoke up, deep in thought. A traumatic experience, like the death of someone who is close to them, is enough to take away their power. Suppose death, so Myra's sister is still alive, right? Sakura asked, looking around to get an answer. And didn't fight, or even train in nearly 3 years. That amount of time is more than enough for your skill to become rusty. I grumbled, and some of the brute fighter of Kumo nodded their head in agreement. Becoming weaker and weaker during that time and couldn't defeat the opponents she shouldn't have much trouble against. Plus, Mira seemed to be the only person Naruto talked and sociable with these past few days. Having Mira spend some more times with Naruto alone could be a chance to make Naruto open up more to everyone. It sounds like she can befriend anyone. Shizen smiled. Well, I guess that's not something unexpected. She was so cheerful and friendly to them. Let's just hope that she'll be able to get Naruto out of his emo self. Ino giggled before frowning. Nothing personal, but I miss our current, the knucklehead Naruto already. The shinobi and kunoichi who knew Naruto well couldn't stop themselves from laughing loudly at the young Yamanaka's words. Naruto, do you want Mira to go with you or should I choose someone else? The guild master asked Naruto, who shrugged. Hey, wait for me. Mira called out, putting the tray in her hands down to the table and quickly followed behind the blonde young man. There's a line break here. Kakashi informed them before continuing. 2 tickets to Bosco, please, Mira said to the ticket seller and put the required amount of money onto the table in front of him. So, they're going by train? I believe so. Naruto stood beside her with his back leaned against the wall with his eyes closed, seemingly uncared about what was going on around him. He sounds so much like you, Sasuke. Kiba pointed his hand at the one and only Uchiha. What did you do to him? I don't think I understand what you're trying to imply, Inuzuka. Was the only reply Kiba got from Indra's reincarnation. You know what, Kiba? The usual silent Shino, Kiba's teammate, spoke up stoically. I don't think that joke is funny anymore. Well, I guess. Here you go, the ticket seller said and gave Mira 2 tickets. The barmaid smiled brightly at him, making the man blush brightly at her beautiful smile before taking them into her hands and walked to Naruto. Well, I guess she's that beautiful then. Jiraiya giggled slyly. Stop rambling about females' beauties, Jiraiya. Tsunade growled and showed the man her fist, promising a punch into the face if he chose not to do what she told him to. I got the tickets, she said, showing him the 2 tickets within her hands. Then let's go, Naruto said shortly and walked ahead again. How rude of him. Kushina scolded before sighing longingly. It's not like she could do anything about it anyway. Mira pouted at him. The blonde didn't even take a glance at them. That was if she didn't want to admit that he was outright ignoring her. I guess it's a new experience for her, isn't it? For someone who is so beautiful like that, Ino shrugged. I guess even us females have to turn our head to look at her, let alone the men. No one ever did that to the drawing card of fairy tale before, let alone a teenager boy like Naruto. It's because he's an old man, said Inoki. He was no longer at the age of chasing behind attractive women like that, so he understood it. Well, with all due respect, Sachikage-sama, I don't think age has anything to do with the problem here. The Godane Mizukage smirked. As you can see, there are a lot of pervert old men around here. She didn't say who they were, but it didn't take a genius mindset for everyone to know who she was talking about, specifically. That Mizukage-sama, I can't agree more. Tsunade grinned and glared at Jiraiya. Mira then turned back to the ticket seller and looked around. It seemed that he sold drinks as well. Naruto Kushina balled her hand into fist and growled in disappointment. If she was there, she would love to knock some sense into him for acting like that. No child of her and Minato was going to act like an Uchiha, or Hyuga. Naruto suddenly felt something cold pressed against his cheek and turned his eyes slightly to the side to see Mary-Jane holding an orange bottle of cold drink with the picture of a slice of orange on it, smiling brightly at him. She sure smile a lot, doesn't she? Tsunade chuckled softly. At least we now know that she's not a moving flower pot. Yujito spoke up, but still, I wonder how does she use her magic? Since she has demons living inside her body, it's like us Jinchuriki? She can tap into their power and use it as her own? Possibly. The first Hokage smiled, but still, this is magic we're talking about. Only time will tell how Mirajane-san uses her magic, and the power of demon inside her. Don't just space out like that, Naruto-kun. It will become a bad habit, Mira said as she took the bottle away from Naruto's cheek before saying that to him with a smile, pushing the drink she bought for Naruto forward again, this time in front of him. Here, I hope you will like it. Naruto looked at Mira for a second before taking the orange bottle from her hand. Mira sat down on the seat opposite from Naruto and put the straws of her own bottle of lemonade to her lips and slowly sipping the cold juice. Thank you, Naruto said shortly before staring out of the window again. At least he still has some common manner. The fourth Shinobi War's mother shrugged. So, what? But before she could finish her question, Naruto brought out the mission request and showed it in front of her face. Mira blinked once before taking a look at the mission's details. The shinobi straightened up and stayed completely silent to listen to the mission's detail. This mission was about finding an ancient artifact which was stolen a couple of days ago, and from the look of it, Mira was sure that it would take them some time. But the payment was good and that money would help everyone a lot in the guild a lot at this hard time. So, all they have to do is find an ancient artifact? Kiba asked in surprise. No offense to the future people, but I don't think that kind of mission should be classified as S-class. Many shinobi and kunoichi nodded their head in agreement, but the Kage thought otherwise. The stolen artifact they are looking for is in the hand of a dark mage, possible more, Naruto said and put the piece of paper back into his pocket before starting to drink his own orange juice. Dark mage? The evil force, I suppose? Sakura shrugged at her best friend. How do you know that? Mary Jane asked in surprise, as she didn't recall any information about the thieves from the mission request. Yeah, we would love to know about that too. Kiba said his thought out loud. Naruto then pointed his hand to the window outside and Mira couldn't help but turn her head at the direction he was pointing. Since the train wasn't moving very fast, Mira could see a large panel above Magnolia's station, and surprisingly it was about Bosco Museum of Magic Art, the place that currently the owner of the ancient artifact they were looking for. Great observation, the second Hokage said with a small smile. Well, he is a rather observant. Jiraiya shrugged with a smile. He's able to notice details others may overlook, even during our 2.5-year training trip. But Hokage-sama, it still doesn't explain how he knows the artifact is in the hand of Dark Mage. A Chunin of Konoha spoke up, raising his hand. Well, let's find out then. Its ownership belonged to Bosco Museum of Magic Art, one of the only museums on Earthland that is applying magic into their security system. Only mage who specialized in sealing magic can pass through that kind of security, Naruto said with a blank voice. Also, the stolen artifact is a magic staff have the power to steal magic. It is particularly useless for normal thieves and can only be used by mage. Very smart, said Shikakanara. So there is a staff that can be used to steal magic from magic users? Kiba exclaimed in surprise. Man, no wonder why it's an S-class mission. Fall into wrong hand, it can become extremely dangerous. Minato said seriously. Steal magic from others and possibly use them as their own. Just imagine how much power one would have if they could steal various different kinds of magic. The shinobi shuddered at the thought of having their abilities stolen from them. Sharingan was a perfect example of stealing technique from the original users. However, it was by copying and mimicking every single movement they made. And these two are going to try to retrieve it. Kushina stated worriedly. I hope it has no power on Naruto, since he doesn't use magic. If it is that, I guess Mira is the one we should worry about. How do you know it is a staff? At that station while you were still busy smiling at that guy, that statement made Mira blush slightly. Well, that's way to put it. They laughed. Naruto's words from Mira lightened up the atmosphere a little. He had a newspaper and I happened to read the article on the first page. It was about presenting a historic discovery of magic, the Staff of Absolution. Naruto then brought out the mission request and showed it to Mira. Once again, the same artifact we're looking for. However, it was stolen a couple of days ago, yet we didn't see or hear anything about it from any medias, with the exception of this mission request, which meant the museum wanted to stay as quiet as possible about this since it was a very powerful and dangerous artifact. It also explained why a now nameless mage guild was able to receive this kind of missions, because they don't want to make an unnecessary fuss as well as delay the day. Wow! Kiba exclaimed in shock. I can't even recognize that idiot anymore. Naruto's not stupid. Kakashi shook his head. He is just naive. Plain and simple are the right words to describe his personalities. If you can simplify the situation in the way he usually sees things, he will understand it right away, even if it's the hardest one. While headstrong and often acting without thinking, he showed that he is a remarkable tactile learner. Tobirama, who fought alongside with Naruto in the Fourth Great Shinobi War, spoke up. Even I was amazed by his intellect, and saw a great potential as a Hokage in him. That boy could easily surpass even that of my brother, and even his brother. Both Kushina and Minato smiled fondly after hearing such fine words for their son from someone as wise as Tobirama Senju. As seriously? Kiba stuttered in pure shock, completely lost for words because of what he just heard. Damn. Am Zinjiri able to tell that much? Mira said in amazement. You're so smart, Naruto-kun. You're like a detective or something, she admitted. Mira and everyone else at Fairy Tail could never imagine something like this from Naruto. I can see that there is still something of the old Naruto in him. He is unpredictable. Surprisingly, it was Sasuke who said that. It's nothing special. Naruto shrugged and shook the bottle, hearing the sound, and he could tell that there was nothing but ice cubes left inside. He reached his hand forward and to Mira's surprise, he exchanged the bottles with her before leaning back in the same position like before. Kami! Ino squealed loudly in excitement. It's an indirect kiss. The girls around her all became excited, and couldn't stop themselves from giggling at such a scene. Ah, he likes her. Kushina giggled. Ahem, Kakashi, can you continue please? Minato requested his student with a somewhat nervous smile. I only pay special attention to everything that happens around me. The answer for a problem could be anywhere. I see. Mira nodded her head. But how did you know about that staff? Staff of Absolution? She had never heard nor read about such magic artifact that could steal others' magic before, and something that dangerous should be recorded in books. She was no Lucy, but Mira also did a lot of research in the history of magic when she learned how to control her own magic. Did you know there is a massive library on Tenru Island? Naruto asked. That place belonged to Mavis, but she let me have access to it while I was there. You can say that I learned a lot over the years. Why do I have the feeling that he's telling a half-lie again? Kiba face-palmed. Naruto had become a big mystery, to say the least, not only for the people of the future but also the people of his current era. Possibly. Hashirama nodded, and there is a chance that he had already had an encounter with that staff in the past. It was only half true. Naruto did read some books in Mavis' library to kill some of his boredom, but it soon turned out to be boredom too after he had read it so many times. He read the books from that library so many times he became bored with them. Sakura asked in shock. Just how many years had he spent on that island? Like I said, he has all the time in the world now. Anyway, now that we know who behind it, this mission should be easy enough. Mira said to Naruto, who only shrugged. There is another line break here. Kakashi informed them once again. Oh my, if it isn't the beautiful Mira Jane Strauss. The director of Bosco Museum of Magic Art said while rubbing his hands together, following behind Naruto and Mira as the two made their way inside the museum. I heard that you and the other mages of Fairy Tail had returned after 7 years of missing. I must admit that I'm rather surprised to see your beauty is still as marvelous as before. Marvelous is a huge understatement, man. Jiraiya exclaimed loudly. She's a total hottie. I have to admit that he's right. Tsunade nodded her head, and she must be that popular too, for some stranger to recognize that easily. The two soon arrived at the crime scene, and instead of stopping like Mira to examine the broken showcase, Naruto walked to a picture on the wall and stared at it with his hands in his pocket. Is it because of your magic that grant you the ability to keep your beauty? The man asked, rather flirtatious toward Mira. So demon and the one who uses their power like Mira Jane has a longer lifespan than human. Kind of make you wonder if Naruto knows someone who is a demon. All heads turned to look at Jiraiya after they heard him said that. What? It's just a theory. I mean, demon can live a very long time, right? If every single person Naruto makes a bond with keep passing away while he will continue to live on, there's a chance that he will try to seek comfort in someone who can stay with him forever, like a demoness or someone like that. We all heard about stories where demons were particularly immortal, right? If Hinata were here, she would probably attack you right away for saying something like that. Tsunade sighed. However, that is a very interesting theory you have there, Jiraiya. His teacher, the Sandaime Hokage, spoke. Let's continue on. I'm sure we will find out about that soon enough. No, it's something else. Mira shook her head and kneeled down to examine the floor around the showcase. Naruto was right, there was some runes written on the floor around it, showing that there used to be a magic circle around the staff to prevent anyone from touching it. From the first look, the runes were very complicated, but she could recognize the magic, which was rather powerful and well prepared. Sealing magic and their magic. Kushina smiled, reminding everyone of the power of Fairy Sphere, as well as the source to create it. Toshi-san, you said someone broke into this room 2 nights ago without alerting the security system and stole the staff? Mira asked. They must be very strong to be able to get through this kind of barrier. Which will make this mission even more dangerous, Minato pointed out. Yes, I believe that they are mages. The man nodded his head. Naruto glanced around the museum and saw many guards. Some of them were mages and seemed to be on guard. The Kage of all generation were a little confused by that. They believed there must be a reason behind the way Naruto was paying attention to the guards around them. However, they decided to remain silent to see how it would turn out. Yes, my friend also thinks that they are no ordinary thieves, isn't that right, Naruto-kun? Mira smiled at Naruto, who was still having his back at her before standing up. I promised to find them and bring the staff back to your museum. Toshi-san. Mira smiled at him. Oh, I have no doubt. Mira-Jane-san. Toshi smiled at the former model. Model? Ino gasped in surprise before smiling. I knew it. She's a model. No wonder why she's so popular to everyone. We should go look for them soon. Naruto-kun. Mira then walked to Naruto, but got curious when he was still staring at the picture in front of him. You have any idea where to look for first? She whispered to Naruto. Mira had no idea where the staff was and where should they look for it first, and the local town people did say that there wasn't any dark guild or dark mage 10 miles radius around the town. Interesting. Tobirama smiled with a nod of his head. I have a feeling that Naruto has already known where the staff is. Everyone looked at him in confusion. Keep going, Kakashi. Minato urged his student, who nodded and continued reading right away. Right here, in this museum. HHH. Many of them gasped and cried out in shock. I knew it. The second Hokage smirked. His words shocked everyone, including the director of the museum and Mary-Jane, as well as all the guards standing around the room. Isn't that right? Toshi-san? Naruto turned around and faced the man. Naruto-kun, what are you talking about? Mira asked, still shocked from what he just said. Yeah, we're feeling the same, thank you very much. Kiba cried and didn't realize that he was talking to the book instead of Mira. I don't think I understand what you are trying to say, sir. The director of the museum said, with a smile on his face. Thought it became somewhat nervous. Sure. Kiba wisely shut his mouth with a sheepish smile. He lured mages here to steal their magic. You're the one who stole the magic staff and made it look like a group dark mages sneaked into this place and stole it. Mira, do you remember what I said about sensing other emotions? Naruto asked, and Mira couldn't help but nod her head. Well, unless that the bald head over there is holding some grudges against you, or he simply want to feel your ass. Well, I won't mind feeling her ass if you asked me. Jiraiya giggled slyly, but everyone chose to ignore him instead. Mira's sweat dropped at that statement. He is having a rather dark and negative emotion toward us. It's a very useful ability, isn't it? Hashirama laughed loudly. My wife had the same power, and she always used it against me. Yeah, especially when you're up to no good, Nisama. The god of shinobi's smile dropped instantly because of his brother's that statement, while the others just laughed at another reminder of Hashirama's rather boisterous personality. Is it true, Toshi-san? Mira asked, looking at the man with her eyes hardened. A cruel smirk then appeared on his face as the man looked at Naruto and Mira darkly. A magic circle appeared within his hand, and in a flash the staff of absolution appeared and glowed with an aura of dark magic. Naruto glanced around and saw that the guards around them removed their clothes and appeared to be bloodthirsty mob of dark mage, with magic weapons glinted dangerously within their hands. Ah, typical bad guys. Kiba smirked, cruel smile, bloodthirsty grin, dark expression, killing intent look in their eyes, but tell you, they're the weakest kinds of bad guys. That was something many could agree on. I must admit, boy, Toshi laughed as he held the staff within his hand, you're very smart. The first mage who didn't fall into my trap right away, unlike many others who got their magic being taken away from them before I ended their life. He chuckled darkly before saying, tell me, how? Everyone held their breath. A smirk appeared on Naruto's face, as he crossed his arms on his chest and a cool aura appeared around him. Mira couldn't help but look at him and gulp slightly, waiting for the usual quiet blonde to show off his awesome intelligence like that teenager detective who was turned into a kid in a series she read when she was younger. Well, that is only my instinct. I was not too sure about it, so I decided to test my theory through a joke, but you fell for my trick right away, which was rather pathetic, I must say. Mira immediately face-palmed. The same could be said for the shinobi who was listening. They were all expecting something way cooler than that. TCH, that boy, I guess he will never change that way. Tobirama growled under his breath. Believe in your instinct. Hashirama nodded and got back on his chair. Having expecting Naruto to say something a lot cooler than that with all that know-it-all aura around him. Toshi gritted his teeth in anger before pointing his staff forward. No matter, I will just take your magic then. And the staff of absolution began to glow. Careful! Everyone cried. They were more concerned about Mira than Naruto. She was a mage, so there was a chance that her magic could be taken away. Protect her, Naruto. Kushina muttered, crossing her finger. That's my boy. Minato smiled with a nod of approval. Her eyes then widened in horror as she saw golden energy started to be released from Naruto. Excuse me, what? Even the Yondaime Hokage was surprised by how the situation had turned out. So it has the power to take away chakra as well, as long as it's classified as power. The white-haired Senju concluded. But he got screamed right into his face by an extremely worried Kushina. That's not the point here, Naidame-sama. And was sucked into the staff. Toshi grinned in satisfaction as he felt himself got more and more powerful. In a few seconds and the stupid blonde mage would collapse and his body withered away like an old leaf. Please be alright, please be alright, please be alright. Kushina kept repeating under her breath, afraid that something might happen to her son. Don't worry, Kushina. Minato held his wife's hand to give her some comfort. He's going to be alright. But she wasn't convinced at all. However, much to everyone's shock, Naruto kept walking forward like nothing happened and stood directly in front of Toshi with a lazy expression on his face. Mira wanted to interfere, but something was telling her that she should stand here and watch what would happen next. It must be because of his massive chakra reserve. Even though he had already known how great Naruto's chakra reserve was, Kakashi was still felt amazed by it. Combined with Kurama, the amount of chakra he has inside him as a time is unpredictable, possibly greater than any of us put together. And don't forget that he's an immortal. Pointed out? Go on, suck them all out. Naruto challenged with a sly smirk as more and more energy was drawn from his body. Yeah, feel like a mosquito sucking my blood or something like that. We get the point, goddammit, Kiba cried, holding his head. So I was right. Hashirama nodded his head. He did have an encounter with the staff in the past. And the pain in the ass he was talking about. Sakura's sweat dropped at her friend's choice of words, must be something akin to Kyuubi's berserk state. That's right. He then tightened the grip around the staff, and to Tosi's shock, cracks began to appear on it. Can't let you do the same thing. Sorry. Naruto then pushed the staff forward and hit Tosi hard on his head, knocking the mage out. Just like that? Ino asked in shock. Yes, just like that. Everyone's sweat dropped. The blonde then raised the staff before slamming it down to the floor, so hard that it broke the stone floor and impaled deeply into it. Let's see. Naruto reached his hand into the man's inner pocket and pulled out a stack of checks. Since we found your staff, we will take the reward for this mission, 1,000,000 jewels. Oh ho, nice brat. Tsunade grinned and gave a thumb up. Never forget about the money. I'm so proud of him right now. Hashirama looked at his granddaughter and couldn't help but sigh in disappointment, with a gloomy atmosphere around him. Sigh, it's all right, brother. Tobirama patted him on his shoulder, giving his older brother some comfort. I understand. Naruto then wrote down the amount he needed before perfectly copying his signature, which Naruto saw on the mission request. He then tore away the check from the stack. Thank you. He wrote down a few more words and threw it down the man's face. Let's go, Mira, Naruto said and walked out of the museum. Hey, what about the staff? Sakura gasped in surprise. He cannot possibly leave something that dangerous back to the evil mage, can he? Wait for me, Naruto. Mira cried out and quickly followed behind Naruto. As she crossed Tosi's unconscious form, she couldn't help but glance at the stack of checks on his face. Her eyes widened when she saw the words Naruto wrote on it. Fuck you! Muahaha! Everyone burst out in laughter after hearing that. Even the most stoic person like Sasuke had to have a small smirk on his face. Oh man! Man, that's gold! Pure gold right there! Kiba was the one who laughed the hardest, and he had to hold on to his stomach to control himself. It took them a full minute to calm down, but eventually the laughter died down, and everyone quickly got back to their seats to continue listening to the story. After the two mages of Fairy Tail left, the dark mages managed to get over their shock and fear and quickly ran over to check on their leader. Some gathered around the staff and tried to pull it out of the ground. However, no matter how they tried, the dark mages could make the staff move a single inch. Nice. Minato grinned but then said, but still, all they have to do is break the ground around the staff and they can get it out easily. Let's just hope that these mages have learnt their lesson. Which, Tsunade doubted they had. I'm back, everyone, Mira said cheerily and opened the door of her guild, letting Naruto walk in first before following behind him, much to the shock of their fellow guildmates. That was fast. Urza stuttered. You found the artifact already? She asked in surprise. Interesting way of showing how mature Naruto has become, I must say. Tsunade smiled fondly. I must admit, I missed the old Naruto, Jiraiya said with a small chuckle. However, turn out that he's not as bad as we think he is, right? Yeah, at least he still has some kind of sense of humor, and still not that hard to talk to. Not me, Naruto found it with his super intelligent mind. Mira pointed to her head and went into a thinking pose. You won't believe how cool he was. Everyone turned their head to look at Naruto, who sat down heavily on his usual seat and closed his eyes. Back to his emo shell, I see. Interesting, I must say. Makarov nodded his head with a smile. Master, can I talk with you? Mira walked toward the third master and whispered to him alone. Of course, my dear, please follow me. Makarov nodded his head before leading Mira Jane away. And that is the end of this chapter, Kakashi declared, closing the book. Who want to read next? End of chapter 4. Chapter 5. And that is the end of this chapter, Kakashi declared, closing the book. Who would like to read next? I will, Kakashi-san. Iruka spoke up, extending his arm to receive the book from the Rokudame Hokage of Konoha. This chapter better entertaining, said, in his usual deep voice. Save for the first chapter and a small part at the end of the last chapter, we haven't seen any real fight so far, and I'm dying to see how powerful he's going to be. That is something we can both agree on, Reikage-sama. Tobirama nodded in agreement. As he said before, time was the only limitation for shinobi, especially for someone with so much potential like Naruto. Once you become immortal, you would have all the time in the world to learn every single ninjutsu, taijutsu, kinjutsu and all kinds of ninja techniques in the history of shinobi. It's also possible that he would become a being similar to Rikudo Sennin, the creator of the ninja world. Let's start the chapter, shall we? Iruka said and opened the book to the 5th chapter before reading it out loud for everyone to hear. Naruto, stop reading that stupid book and fight me for real this time. Natsu is at it again, it seems, Minato said, releasing a small chuckle. This boy is even more violent than Naruto when he was younger. Ino giggled. At least he didn't run around and challenge everyone to a fight, well, except for Sasuke-kun, that is. The lone Uchiha said nothing, but nodded his head in agreement. For your information, Natsu, this is not a stupid book, Naruto replied blankly to the energetic fire dragon slayer, which in his opinion was a lot more annoying than usual those past few days. I can't help but think that it's a huge understatement. Tsunade concluded, grinning. Naruto has finally tasted his own medicine. He knows how we all feel whenever he acts like an idiot around us now. And that, Tsunade-sama, Sakura smiled to her teacher, is a huge understatement too. Everyone broke out in laughter after that. TCH, and someone like that have the potential to surpass even my brother Tobirama muttered under his breath with a slight scowl. What's with all the crazy, irresponsible people? He turned to look at his older brother, Hashirama Senju, who had one of the loudest laughter among them. And a no is no. I have no reason to fight you. He then turned his head to look at the white-haired barmaid, who then put a dish full of cookies down on the table in front of him. Thank you, Mira, he said gratefully and returned to reading his book, picking up a cookie and taking a small bite. Well, that's better than sitting still and doing nothing. Kushina nodded her head in approval, before signaling Irika to continue reading. She was pleased to hear that her son had become more social and didn't outright ignore his fellow guildmates anymore. Enjoy your snack, Naruto-kun, Mira said cheerily before dashing away. The third master of Fairy Tail, Makarov, sat on the bar stand with a cup of beer in his hands. His eyes were still looking at Naruto Uzumaki, the newest member of his guild, with curiosity. 3 days had passed since Naruto's first mission, also an S-class mission with Mirajane, and the blonde had returned to his usual spot and daily activities, which were then included a book in them. Almost a week passed since the day Naruto joined Fairy Tail, and yet they still knew nothing about him or his power. Naruto was an enigma, a puzzle that could never be solved, extremely hard to read and impossible to know what he was thinking in his head with that usual blank, lazy and uncared about what was happening around his expression on his face. A true shinobi never let anyone see through him, Tobirama said firmly. I think, like Makarov said, it's just because he's too lazy, or just don't care enough to do anything for anyone to see through him. Mira told him about Naruto's incredibly intelligent and sharp instinct after they returned from the mission. He was able to tell a lot about their mission just by looking at the mission request and some panel and newspaper he saw on the way to the train, something Makarov only heard the stories about the first master, a genius tactician. An incredibly clever young woman. Whoa, Mavis sounds so amazing, doesn't she? Ino asked in amazement. She's so cool for someone who looks so young. Again, since she's a spirit, we still don't know much about her. Shikaka concluded. However, I can also say that she's not just smart, but very powerful. She was the first master of Fairy Tail, which meant she was dead long before Makarov took over the position of guild master, and yet her spirit is still there, wandering around Tenru Island and talk with everyone, including Naruto, who are going to stay there for a very long time. Do you think that there's a magic that let the spirit of a dead person appear? Tsunade asked curiously. After all, her late lover, Dan Kato, had a technique that allowed his spirit to materialize and leave his body. Possible. Shikaka nodded his head. Let's just read on and see. Not only that, but he was able to tell that the director of Bosco Museum of Magic Art was the thief in the first place. But what shocked him the most was the case about the Staff of Absolution, something that was greatly feared in the history of magic before the Zerif became immortal and known by Earthland as the most powerful dark mages. Hold on a second, Irika-sensei. Kiba raised his hand and cried out loudly. Did I just hear that right? Someone became immortal? Everyone widened their eyes in realization. Not possible. Way possible, Tobirama. Hashirama shook his head. This man, Zerif, has become an immortal. Makarov knows about him, the entire Earthland, the future world knows about him, and I believe that his name has been recorded in the history of magic. The second Hokage crossed his hand on his chest and made a displeased face, but didn't say anything because his brother was right. Now that you mention it, he was mentioned in the first chapter, wasn't he? Sarutobi asked as he took the book from Irika and flipped back to the end of chapter 1 here. Right here, he was there when Naruto stopped Agnologia from destroying Tenru Island, and he thanked Naruto for protecting Natsu. Don't tell me those two are related. Sakura gasped. All of that information was hurting his head really bad. And he's related to Natsu. Shino spoke up calmly, reminding everyone. Anyway, we should continue. At that moment, Kushina decided to speak up. We won't get anywhere like this. She's right. Minato nodded and signaled for the Chunin to continue reading. The staff could suck out one's magic as well as their life force, killing the mage before turning it into the staff user's magic, and gave him the limitless amount of magic, and yet Naruto was able to withstand the sucking process without any trouble, as if nothing happened. It terrified him, thinking just how powerful this young man was. Naruto's magical energy was sucked out of his body for a total 10 seconds and he still appeared to be perfectly normal, while it was recorded in the history of magic that a second of sucking was already deadly, even for the strongest mages. I guess, having a massive chakra reserve as well as a partner with an even larger reserve has its benefit. Jiraiya shrugged. So compared to the wizards of the future, Naruto's a lot more powerful. Tsunade said, well, I guess it's natural because he's way stronger than any of us now. The only person that could hold a candle to Naruto was Sasuke, but from the look of it, in the future their favorite blonde had already surpassed the combination of their powers. Makarov only had a glimpse of his power during Agnologia's attack, which was more than unimaginable to begin with, and yet from what he saw, Naruto wasn't even serious at that time. An enigma, no better word to describe Naruto Uzumaki. Please, you have to fight me, Naruto, Natsu said with a massive grin, leaning on Naruto's table with Happy sitting on the top of his head. I trained a lot these past few days to beat you. Even if I can't beat you now, I want to test out just how much more powerful I have become. Listen here, kid, Naruto said and put the last piece of cookies he was eating into his mouth before picking up a new one. Why don't you go and rub your girlfriend's ass over there or something like that to return her feelings? He pointed to Lisana, who flinched in shock and blushed furiously at his words. And leave me alone for 1 second. PFFF. The cheeks of the younger generation of ninja bulged out as they tried to hold their laughter in, while the Kage and the older shook their head while sighing. He was funny, but in a very sick way. Makarov couldn't help but snort quietly. Naruto also has a rather sick sense of humor. Well, like ginger, the older the spicier, I guess. Hiruzen chuckled. What are you talking about? Natsu asked in confusion before shaking his head. So, this boy is also as dense as hell. Ino face-palmed. He's reminding me too much of the old Naruto. It took him like forever to notice her feelings and return it. Yeah. Sakura nodded in agreement. Poor her. It was the only thing she could say. Anyway, let's fight. The Pinkette roared and intended to punch Naruto in the face, only for him to lazily move his head to the side and easily avoid Natsu's punch, making the younger boy fall forward. Poor guy doesn't know who he is messing with. Kiba smirked while shaking his head. I bet that Naruto can crush 10 guys like him without breaking a sweat. The Fire Dragon Slayer smirked and immediately got up to his feet and prepared for another attack. However, before he could even make a single move, he was punched right in the face and sent flying across the hall. That was fast. Then who? Natsu. The person attacked him was none other than Urza Scarlet, as she said loudly with authority in her voice and pointed her finger at the boy, who was getting back to his feet at the other side of the hall while massaging his hurt cheek with his hand. How many times do I have to tell you not to pick a fight with your fellow guildmates? She just punched him in the face, and then told him to stop picking a fight with his fellow guildmates. Tsunade's sweat dropped. I guess it's quite obvious that she has short temper, and situation like this happens pretty often. Jiraiya chuckled. Sound pretty familiar, isn't it, Minato? The yellow flash chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head while his wife crossed her hands on her chest and pouted, with her cheeks puffed out in annoyance. But still, Kakashi decided to change the topic. Natsu's endurance is quite amazing, isn't it? Urza punched him with enough force to send him flying across the hall, and yet he only has a sore cheek. Or his head is just too hard. Sakura giggled. I mean literally. Redhead and their temper, Naruto muttered and flipped to another page of his book. Well, you really shouldn't say that, Naruto. Minato chuckled as he glanced at his wife. Everyone immediately understood where Naruto got that strange impression about Redhead from. I'm not that bad, am I? I'm so sorry for his behavior, Naruto. It seemed I didn't educate him about fighting among friends well enough. Urza said to him before saying, You may strike me. This girl is so weird, Kiba exclaimed. No, young man, it's hot. Jiraiya giggled slyly. She's a masochist. How naughty for a woman with her personalities. Like I said, Tsunade sighed, crossing her arms under her large breasts. Ignore him. A masochist, I see. Naruto nodded his head without turning back. Urza was about to say something when suddenly the one she punched away jumped to stand in front of her. And the boy's already back to his feet, Ino said dramatically and as annoying as ever. Urza! Natsu cried out. Don't you think it is unfair for us that Naruto keeps his magic all for himself until now? Natsu asked while pointing his hand at Naruto. If he is our friend, then there should be no secret between us. Well, particularly, he's not using magic, so. But still, it's very optimistic of him to say something like that. Hashirama said with a smile. The future is bright, isn't it? From the moment you were born, life is unfair, kid, and you will have to live with that. Naruto said emotionlessly as he flipped through a page before saying, sometimes, you will have to fight the battle where you don't even know what your opponent's power is and learn to prepare for the worst. I still can't get used to Naruto being so smart, and all. Ino said as she put her hands on her head. It sounds so weird. Everyone chuckled softly at that. That is why I'm asking you to fight me. I have prepared for the worst already. Natsu said with a cheery grin. I trained a lot, these past few days to fight you. Naruto, Makarov spoke up. Natsu isn't going to give up unless you give him what he wants. The guild master chuckled. What a stubborn brat. I grumbled in annoyance. But I like him. Tsunade smiled fondly at the resemblances. Naruto was just like that a few years back. Look how much he has grown. And then have him come back ask for more. No thanks, old man. Naruto shook his head. Even though I don't agree with Natsu's action, I agree with the master. Urza nodded. You should fight him. A friendly spar won't hurt. Natsu nodded his head rapidly. I have a feeling that their fight is going to be anything but friendly. Niji concluded. Look how enthusiastic he is. He's going to give it all in the fight, and I'm sure it's not going to be pretty. He has the power to slay a dragon, after all. Guy, his teacher chuckled with a nod of his head. Naruto could only sigh and closed his book and stood up from his seat before looking down at Natsu straight in the eyes. It wasn't like he got anything to do, and it had been a long time since he actually tried to do something other than sat at one place and felt the time pass slowly around him pointlessly. Okay, kid, if you want it, then I will show you. Naruto then leaned back and said with a satisfaction smirk, holding 5 wallets in his hand. If I win, I will take all of your money, including your team's money as well. Those who was drinking spat their beer out of their mouth in shock. That scene is somewhat familiar, isn't it, Tsunade-sama? Shizen asked her teacher, making Tsunade chuckle while shaking her head. That brings back a lot of memories. Jiraiya smiled and placed a hand on Tsunade's shoulder. Ga! Natsu, Lucy, Urza, Gray, and Wendy all checked their pocket and found it completely empty before crying out in surprise. When did you? They all asked and pointed at Naruto. Even Urza, who stored her wallet in her pocket dimension, was also stolen. Pocket dimension? Kiba asked curiously. Probably it's a place Urza stores her belongings in. Like a shinobi, we usually store weapons and scrolls using sealing techniques. Minato explained, holding a scroll up. And I will also cook your cats, Naruto said with a devious smirk, and much to everyone's shock again, holding Happy, Carla and Lily's tail in his hands. Carla. Happy. Lily. So there are 2 more talking and flying cats like Happy around? Apparently yes. Tobirama nodded. Makarov and Gildart broke out in laughter. Naruto sure had a sick sense of humor. Don't make a joke like that. Natsu cried out and tried to grab his wallet as well as Happy, who along with Carla and Lily was getting very uncomfortable with their tails being held like that. Give me back Happy and my money. Naruto then released the cat, but he still kept the wallets in his hands. For one second, I thought he was serious about cooking the cat there. Is that? Hashirama turned to his granddaughter and asked in surprise. Yes, it's the necklace you gave me. Tsunade nodded but then said in surprise, but I thought it was destroyed. It was during the Pain's invasion. Sakura decided to explain to Naruto's parents. Naruto turned into a Six-Tails version of Kyuubi when he thought Hinata was killed by Pain. The crystal tried to restrain him, but he took it out and crushed it with his own hand. Minato nodded his head in understanding while Kushina could only sigh. I guess it's a copy or something like that. I don't think so. Tsunade shook her head in disagreement. What is so special about that anyway? Natsu asked while tilting his head to the side, not impressed. This necklace belonged to my godmother. Before that it belonged to her grandfather. Naruto smiled, one of a few real smiles Fairy Tail had ever seen from him, before continuing. It was made from a special crystal gem, and if you sold this to a jewelry store, 3 mountains containing gold mines could be bought with the profits. Definitely the one I gave him. Tsunade said it's actually priceless, but I guess 3 mountains gold mines will do just fine. The ninja of the villages, and even some in Konoha, dropped their mouth in shock as her statement. They couldn't believe that there was actually something like that, and Naruto had been wearing that on his neck all the time. Let's just hope that he makes bets better than you. Jiraiya smirked and Tsunade huffed, turning her head away. I lost that bet, but he deserved it. Well, for a bunch of people that are short on money, I guess absolute shock is just an understatement. Why are you actually wearing a fortune on your neck? Natsu gasped in shock. You're kidding. No, I'm not. This thing is actually priceless. Naruto smirked evilly and challengingly. I guarantee you that. There was no lie in his tone. All right then. Natsu cried out with excitement. You're on. I'm all fired up. There's a line break at this point, Irika informed them. A few minutes later, everyone was geared up and greatly excited for the fight about to take place, as this was the first time they would be able to see Naruto in action for real. Many had cups of beer on their hands as well as popcorn, some prattled about random things, and others were placing bets to predict the winner. Kana, of course, was taking everyone's bets. Naruto and Natsu's fighting ground was a large open area of grass and dirt in the middle of the lush forest near Magnolia town. The wizards of Fairy Tail were gathered around the southern rim of the area. Ugh! Natsu ignited flames around his body in anticipation. Come on, let's get this fight started already. he cried out with Naruto standing in front of him. Impatient, isn't he? Kiba smirked. Let's see how excited he is when he has his ass hanged to him. And you're the one to talk? Shino said with his usual stoic tone, catching the Inuzuka off guard, much to everyone's amusement. From across the crowd, Kana was sitting on a wooden crate. A barrel of beer was by her side while she gathered bets from other members of the guild. For the first time ever, everyone was betting on Naruto to win, only his team was praying that Natsu would somehow find a way to win in order to get back their money. I highly doubt that. Tsunade smirked, along with Jiraiya. I can almost imagine this being a complete replica of his bet with you, Tsunade-sama. Shizen smiled, resisting the urge to chuckle. Precisely. Jiraiya grinned. Keep your shorts on, Kana shouted at Natsu. I still got people placing their bets. Gar. I want to fight him already. Natsu then pointed his finger to Naruto. Remember, you're not allowed to use that eyes trick of yours and have to use your magic or fight for real in this fight. That was something both Naruto and Natsu agreed on. Natsu would go all out against him while Naruto would show his magic to the pinkette as a form of respect. Minato's sweat dropped. Naruto didn't need Sharingan before he became immortal. If he one-shots the pink dude after reassuring him, I don't think I'll be able to hold back my laughter. Kiba reckoned, gulping the spit in his mouth in preparation. Least he does a spit take if it happens. Naruto-kun wouldn't do such a not youthful and disrespectful thing. Lee cried out, clenching his fists with energy. Ya tell em, Lee. Guy supported his student by giving a cringy thumbs up. All bets are in, Kana shouted. Once Master Makarov heard Kana's announcement, he took a few steps in front of the crowd and let the match begin. He swiped his hand through the air while announcing loudly. Immediately the Fire Dragon Slayer then leaped forward, his flames intensifying from his fist as he did so while Naruto was still standing completely still and slowly reached his hand into his pocket. Everyone held their breath and waited for him to pull out a weapon or something like that. No way, Sasuke uttered, his eyebrow twitching slightly. Kakashi already knew what's coming, and all he could do was face palm. And he pulled out the book he had been reading all this time. If Natsu-san is really like our old Naruto, he's going to go ballistic, Sakura stated, deadpanning. Kakashi, look at what you have done to Naruto, Guy yelled in despair. What the hell? Natsu stopped midway through his attack when he saw Naruto open his book and casually read it. What are you doing? He cried out. I'm going to enjoy this book because it's too good to leave it for later, Naruto said while pointing one finger up. I will add one more rule to our fight. If you manage to land even a slightest of blow on me, you will win. What? Are you looking down on me again? Natsu cried out. Kakashi scratched his cheeks, kind of, but in a very respectful way. Tell us that when it makes sense, Sasuke and Sakura uttered coldly. A few meters away, Kushina practically scrutinized the screen with calculating eyes, and her palm resting on her mouth. Said pervert felt a shiver crawl up his spine, before gulping and turning to Kushina. The hot-tempered red hair narrowed her eyes, her palm and fingers never leaving her mouth. Naruto better not be reading your porn. Ah crap. Nope, I'm very serious right here. Naruto looked up from his book. I will use my magic, that's a promise. Yes, but my intentions for that lesson were to make them work as a team, Kakashi explained, nonchalantly. Okay then, don't regret it later. And with that, Natsu charged at Naruto again with his fist flared with Dragon's Fire Carrier no Tekken. Natsu sent a punch toward Naruto, but before his fist could connect with the blonde's face, sand suddenly shot up from the ground and formed a wall in front of Naruto, stopping Natsu's fist from punching Naruto in the face. Wah! Gaara's eyes nearly bulged from their sockets, while the rest of the sand shinobi started at the screen in shock. Wait, you people don't know? Sasuke asked, surprised. Since Naruto possesses chakra of each of the tail beast within his body, he is able to perform techniques for each one. Yeah, but he was only able to combine each trait with a Rasengan. The level of control he is showing here is on par, maybe even surpassed that of Kazekage's. Regardless of being immortal, the fact remains that he might as well mastered each tailed beast to a godlike level. Can you imagine his power? Anoki stated, highly impressed. Yeah, Naruto's skills are overpowered, his enemies will run away sour. Yeah. Shut it, B. Grumbled. Sand magic? Max cried out in shock. He can use sand magic too? Wait, you can? Jiraiya wondered, eyebrow raised. No, there is something different about that sand. Urza shook her head and the master nodded his head. Natsu gritted his teeth and kicked Naruto, however the sand suddenly moved to the side and blocked Natsu's foot as well. Out of frustration, Natsu then jumped to the right and made another attack, but once again, the wall of sand rose up on itself and stopped Natsu's attack as if it had a mind of itself. No magic power is coming from that guy, Laxus commented, the sand is protecting him on its own. Everybody in the stadium smirked. Man, If only they could have seen Naruto's Rakuta Sennin mode-tailed beast raisin shuriken. What? How is that even possible? Lucy asked in shock. Look at him, he is not even looking, Gildart said calmly, looking at Natsu, who was sending punches and kicks at Naruto's wall of sand from behind the blonde. An absolute defense, Naruto said, thrusting his palm behind him, making a column of sand shoot out and crash into Natsu's face, knocking him back several feet away. Unless you're faster than the sand's reaction, you won't be able to get through this defense. Yes, he truly has mastered it to an amazing degree if he's able to perform those current feats. Gaara smiled, feeling excitement burn in him at the prospect of a rematch between his brother and all but blood in him. Excellent. Hashirama and Tobirama nodded in approval. And from the look of it, that reaction is almost instantly. Makarov nodded his head. This fight is over for Natsu. Don't look down on me. Natsu gritted his teeth and brought his head back. His cheeks puffed out. No hoko. An enormous torrent of flames ripped out from the boy's mouth and toward Naruto, who only smirked. The wall of sand suddenly engulfed Naruto from his head down, and suddenly fell to the ground freely as if he wasn't there at all. Natsu stopped his attack and looked around to search for any sign of Naruto. Kaneko Tekken. In a blur, Naruto suddenly appeared behind Natsu with his fist cocked back in the same manner of Natsu's usual iron fist attack stance, with blue flame dancing around his hand. Sorry, can't help it. He then punched Natsu right in the face, knocking him back several feet on the ground. Utilizing Matabi's fire in the form of a dragon slayer's attack. A smirked, while Byakuya grinned. Not bad at all. Blue fire? Gray asked in shock. Just how many magic does he has? Everyone was also wondering the same thing. Natsu picked himself off the ground and wiped the bruise on his cheek. Usually, fire attacks wouldn't be able to do much damage on him, and yet he clearly felt the heat and power of Naruto's fire, showing that it was no ordinary flame. This is what I'm talking about. He grinned with his body shook with excitement. A real fight. You want to talk, Kiba? All Naruto had to do was fart on your face to defeat you. Shikamaru stated, nonchalantly, though if you looked really close, you could recognize a small smirk on his face. Everybody once again burst out laughing, with Hashirama holding his stomach as tears ran down his face at the image in his head. He screamed and laughed to his heart content, which made Tobirama shake his head with a sigh. I rest my case. Yes, like a man. Elfman cried out while nodding his head. The next thing they saw was an invisible force slammed into Natsu's back, creating a small yet noticeable shockwave and sent him into the air, and the Dragon Slayer could only cry out in pain, desperately trying to regain his body. But before he could do so, something suddenly smashed into Natsu's stomach and sent him away again. But not a second later, Natsu was once again attacked by something he nor everyone could see. Fast. The younger generation gasped. Godspeed, ladies and gentlemen, Godspeed. Jiraiya smirked. That was incredibly cringy and difficult to watch. Tsunade deadpan, which made the Toad Sage collapse with anime tears, but he immediately got up as Tsunade smiled and laughed. Youth. Fairy Tail watched in shock as Natsu was smacked around like a ragdoll in the air. The shockwaves were becoming stronger and stronger with each second, and even Natsu's uncontrollable toss speed was becoming hard to keep up to. What's going on? Lucy asked with her body shaking. I can't see anything at all. Too fast, Laxus muttered with his eyes wide in shock. This is way too fast. And then, Natsu was smacked down to the ground before being forced into the air once again. This time, Naruto appeared above him, fully revealed himself to be the one who attacked all this time. You got to give the boy some credit though. He's taking a beating and keeps on getting up. I commend him. Hiruzen smiled, nodding in approval for Natsu's courage and trying his hardest to match Naruto. Reminds you of someone, old man? Tsunade asked, smiling, though it came of more as a statement. That is not human speed. Jet, the one who was already used to extreme speed because of his magic, muttered in shock with sweat pouring down his forehead. No shit. I will take all of your money. I agree. Tsunade supported completely with a thumbs up. That was the only thing Natsu could hear before blackness took over him as Naruto sent a hard punch into Natsu's stomach, smashing him down to the ground with so much force that it created shockwaves strong enough to knock everyone back. Naruto then returned to the ground gratefully and picked up his book without any more words. You corrupted him, Kakashi Minato stated, nervously. Winner Naruto Makarov stated quietly. I won't cook the cats, Naruto said and reached for the wallets. He then opened each of them before pulling the stacks of money out of them before throwing the wallets back to their owners. But I think I will take these. He walked to Mira and picked out a few thousand jewels. This is for my meals for the next few days and some tips for you. Mira could only accept with her head nodding slowly. Naruto then walked into the guild and closed the door behind him. Oh, thank goodness. I was worried that he had lost all respect, but he is still well-mannered. Kushina sighed in relief, before deadpanning, well, to some extent. What kind of power was that? A few hours later. Man. This suck. Natsu Dragneel muttered with bandages wrapped around him from head to toe. Naruto clearly didn't go easy on him that day, and now he was left with a lot of injuries as well as broken bones and bruises all on his body, even after most of them were healed by Wendy. Unable to do anything other than cross his arms on his chest and huffed all day. Damn, Naruto did a number on him, Ino uttered, shaking her head in exasperation. Well, he asked for it. Mei smiled, looking at members of Fairy Tail interacting around Natsu with a smile. Shut up. Lucy cried out with her finger pointing at Natsu. This is what you get for making our money got taken away pointlessly like that. Gray, Urza, and Wendy flinched at the mention of their money. I know how you feel, Lucy-san, I know how you feel, Tsunade said. Hey, isn't Naruto the one who stole it? Then don't go around challenge him again. Then she cried, how am I supposed to pay my rent this month? She then walked over to Naruto, who was at his usual spot, and read a copy of the Sorcerer magazine while enjoying cookies and tea served by Mira. Naruto. Come on, Naru, cut her some slack just this once, Kushina said, frowning slightly. Yes? He asked, not taking his way from his book. How rude, brat. Jiraiya grumbled. Oh, how lucky it would be to be in Naruto's position, having a hot blonde chick about to plead with sexiness. Sexiness? Apparently Jiraiya didn't know that wasn't Lucy's forte. See, can you give me my money back? She stuttered nervously. I worked very hard to earn them so I can pay my rent this month. She put both of her hands together. Please, she said hopefully. No, can't do, Naruto said shortly, shattered all of Lucy's hope. If I remember correctly, none of you tried to stop Natsu from continuing to his challenge after I told him about the money I would take if I win. Apparently you all agreed to it. Naruto states a valid point. In that case, Tobirama began, firmly with his hands crossed, it is only right that the deal should be closed. Tobirama, stop concluding stuff so dramatically. Hashirama sighed in exasperation. But Naruto then closed the magazine and put it down on the table before turning his head to look at Lucy. What? She was a little taken apart by the way Naruto was looking at her. Jiraiya could only giggle perversely, resulting in Tsunade slapping the back of head. I don't know why a girl like you has to worry so much about money, Naruto asked. Ever since I came here, I had heard a total of 52 times you whined about rent and money, and that was in this building alone. Wait, you counted? Someone shouted, overhearing Naruto and Lucy's conversation. Once again, their cheeks puffed with redness at trying to hold their laughter at the moment. I just fucking love the Gaki's comebacks, Anko stated, wiping a joyful tear away from her eye. And Fairy Tail's side comments are just gold. Kushina laughed. Hard to not notice if she kept doing that from time to time. Lucy blushed in embarrassment. Naruto then turned back to Lucy. My point is, you can become a model or something like that with this kind of body. Have you ever tried modeling before? Naruto asked, taking a bite of his snack. Nero. Jiraiya cheered. That was definitely the right line, and all those lessons came in handy in the end. Let's me guess, you were modeling and those guys came and ruined it. Naruto pointed his finger to Natsu and Gray. Smack. Multiple face palms resounded, as everybody deadpanned. I should have known. Kakashi's sweat dropped. And no, I mean, yeah, they did something like that, but my dream is becoming a writer, not a model. So Lucy chuckled nervously while scratching the back of her head. Oh. Jiraiya gasped, a fascinated expression on his face. A writer? Naruto let out a soft smile before saying, any book yet? He asked. Yes, but you know. Naruto brought out his hand to stop her from saying anything more, already understood from the way she was acting that Lucy's books couldn't sell very well before pulling a small scroll out of the pouch behind him. What is that? Naruto unscrolled his scroll, showing multi-complex characters inside before pressing his hand on the largest symbol. Lucy gasped when she saw a book appeared out of it. Here, I will let you borrow this. Naruto gave it to Lucy. So he finally embraced Fuinjutsu, huh? Minato smiled, while Kushina grinned proudly. Well, I taught him the basics. Guess with being immortal he had enough time to take it further, Jiraiya said. What is this book? Lucy asked in amazement. The tale of the utterly gusty shinobi? She turned around and searched for the author's name. Jiraiya the Toad Sage? Everybody turned to Jiraiya, whose jaw impacted with the ground in shock. I guess we forgot to tell you that your book was the main factor in giving him the will and power to defeat pain and end the 4th grade ninja war. He holds it very close to his heart, Jiraiya-sama. Kakashi stated, his eyes shaped in an upside-down U. Wow, he kept it safe all this time. Minato uttered, eyes wide. Mwahaha, who in their right mind would name a book with that lame name? Natsu and his cat roared out in laughter. However, they immediately stopped, and their face became as pale as a ghost when 2 kunai was thrown toward them and impaled onto the wooden wall, only a millimeter from their face. Hey! Jiraiya pouted before sitting down with his hands crossed and head to one side. I have been told many times it wasn't sexual appealing, but that was just rude. Well, those kanais missed to rate them, so Naruto's fighting in your honor, Kiba stated, smirking at the pale Natsu who is about to drop his shit. That book is as important to me as this necklace, Naruto said, pointing at the necklace he wore on his neck. My godfather is the writer. It's not the best seller ever, but to me, it is the best kind of book, Naruto said with a smile, as Lucy opened the book and took a glance. This is, she muttered. Yes, I was named after the main character in that book. Naruto nodded his head. It was sold poorly, nobody bought it. Naruto turned back to eat his snack. I hope it will give you some inspirations to never give up as a writer and for your future books as well. Lucy then hugged it tightly to her chest before bowing. Thank you? She stood up with a bright smile. Oh. All the women co-ed with glossed eyes. That interaction between those two was even cuter than Naruto and Myra's, Ino sang, her hands clasped together, with a smile on her face. Naruto then reached his hand into his pocket and pulled out a stack of money, before giving it to Lucy. He's actually giving it back, Tsunade yelled. Here, I won't return the money to you, but I will give you this to have a copy of each and every single one of your novels. Lucy gasped in shock. I will send them to you immediately. Lucy rapidly bowed her head before running out of the guilds as fast as she could, heading to her home to grab the books Naruto bought while crying out in happiness. Such a cute and beautiful scene. Mei smiled warmly. Looks like Naruto is still the same old boy that warmed our hearts. $5. This will lead to something even more in the future, Jiraiya whispered to Minato, Sarutobi and Kakashi. With the amount of attention he is grabbing, I'd rather not take my chances and say no, Minato said nervously, while rubbing the back of his head. Kia, Nara will get so many girlfriends. Kushina squealed in excitement. What's wrong with her? Natsu grumbled. Naruto looked up and saw Mira Jane smiling at him softly. You do care about everyone, don't you? Mira asked softly and put another cup of tea down to the table in front of Naruto. Here, this is for me this time. Everyone burst out laughing at that. Mira Jane might just be right on that one. Even they could clearly see it during that interaction with Lucy. Thanks. Naruto nodded his head. By the way, Naruto, interesting magic you possess there. Makarov spoke up, while looking at the scroll on Naruto's table. I didn't recall its name, though. Fuinjutsu. The sealing art of shinobi. Naruto said and folded his scroll back and put it into his pocket. Wait, you mean like a ninja? Natsu asked excitedly, holding the kunai in his hands. And isn't this ninja's weapons too? You're a ninja? Ha, the brat catches on quick. Anoki said, a hint of sarcasm in his tone, but it was mostly amusement. What an annoying brat. Naruto said and pushed him away. Anyway, old man, are there any new mission I can do? Naruto asked. I'm saving money to buy a house. You really need to save money with that thing on your neck? Gray asked, pointing at Naruto. Not unless he pulls a Tsunade again, then that would be a perfect plan. Jiraiya voiced out, with arms crossed, which made the fifth Hokage pout, an eyebrow twitching. Other than putting it to gambling, I have no reason to sell it. Naruto shook his head. I got one here, but it is only a C-class mission. Makarov said and brought out a mission request from his pocket. Something about a blue gemstone fell into the ocean and they couldn't find it. I will do it. Naruto stood up and got the paper request from the master. Tell Lucy to put my books on the table. I will get them later. And with that, he left the guild. There's a line break here, guys, Iruka said, which made them take a few seconds to stretch and break some knuckle. He then continued reading. You lost it here? Naruto asked, standing on the deck of the fancy pleasure boat that was taking him to the middle of nowhere, in his opinion, of course. The man who requested this mission was rather rich, and was a famous director of the Sorcerer magazine, who was doing his business using his own pleasure boat. The gemstone Naruto was looking for was a gift for his wife, but he accidentally dropped it during a photo shoot yesterday with the magazine's model, and the gem rolled on the deck before falling into the sea below. Ah, I feel bad for him. He must have worked hard to buy his wife such a gift, Kushina said sadly. Nah, Naruto will handle this just fine, Kushi-chan, Minato reassured, smiling, with the rest of them nodding in agreement in the room. Yes, right at this spot. The man nodded his head. Young man, wait. Without listening to the man who requested the mission, Naruto jumped over the cliff and down to the sea below. Do all fairy tales mages this reckless? His asked while chuckling nervously before turning to the coxswain. Stop the boat, will you? He said loudly. I found it. His head snapped to the side and saw Naruto popped his head up from the water surface holding a blue gemstone in his hand. Is this the right thing? He asked loudly. See, but man, 3 minutes. That was fast, the photographer said in amazement before reaching out for a float with a string attracted to it. Here he turned around and about to throw the float to Naruto when suddenly the blonde launched himself out of the water several feet into the air before landing gracefully down to the spot he was at a few seconds ago. Without making a sound, "Now I know why Jasoni's so excited when it comes to you guys," he said slowly. "Here, your gemstone." Naruto gave it to the man. Is Naruto becoming a gag character? Sigh, just shut up, Kiba. Yep, a glass of something other than sea water would be nice, Naruto said with a smile, and of course, my reward should be nice. Naruto sighed as he stared at the cloud lazily floating in the sky above him. His life sure suck. Being an immortal, I could only imagine, Hashirama stated, a thoughtful expression on his face. That was the only thing that was residing inside of his head. Doing missions like this clearly reminded him of the old days, with his team and everyone, brought back a lot of memories, but at the same time made Naruto wanted to quit this as soon as possible and spend his life alone again on Tenru Island, again. He didn't know what Mavis was thinking in that little head, yet extremely smart of her. Being one of the only persons that took a part in his life, Naruto couldn't fully read or foresee her intentions, something that the both of them shared. But clearly she wanted him to stop being so miserable and pathetic by filling his too quiet life with her pride party. Everybody held a sad expression as they heard Iruka shakily read out Naruto's thoughts and feelings. He must have just barely held his emotions with seeing everyone he knew die with time. Kushina sniffed, which made Minato wrap an arm around her shoulders. I think Mavis saw this quality in Naruto as well. She must have had some sort of clue that only a rowdy and loving family like Fairy Tail would change Naruto for the better, Tsunade said, smiling sadly. A little more than a week and Naruto already had to beat up a brat just so he would stop bugging him. The only reason Naruto agreed to tag along with them was because Mavis said he might find something interesting from them. What a turn of life. At least, he got something to do now. He barely notices that he is changing his ways, everyone thought with smiles on their faces. It's time, everyone. Naruto moved his head down a little and saw a slim young woman of average height with large blue eyes wearing a white bathrobe on her body, curly long, wavy and flowing blonde hair, gathered on the back of her head and tied in a ponytail that reached down to her middle back, with two short bangs framing her face. And a decorative flower with large petals adorning the right part of her head above her right ear stepped onto the deck with a group of men behind her, probably the Sorcerer magazine's photography crew with the equipment they were carrying. Nosebleed. Holy shit! Jiraiya bellowed as blood burst forth from his nose. His eyes practically bulged out of its sockets at seeing the blonde model's ass. Oh my, she's really beautiful, Mei uttered, wide-eyed. So not fair, how can someone be so freaking gorgeous? All the disadvantaged women yelled. And it just so happened that Naruto is there, that lucky bastard, Kiba yelled, crying anime tears. When they were a few meters away from Naruto, at the top of the deck a man then walked over and put a long chair there while the other setting up the light, mirror and everything Naruto could think about a professional photo shoot. When everything was setting, the young woman then undid the belt around her waist and removed her bathrobe from her body, showing that she was wearing a blue patterned bikini with white outlines and an absolutely perfect curvy body, something that could only belong to a professional supermodel, with large breasts and curves at all the right place. She then sat down on the chair and made a sexy pose, with a soft and seductive smile on her face. Kushina downright smacked her palm over Minato's eyes. Ow, Minato uttered hopelessly. Blood ran down Kakashi's and Sarutobi's nose, and surprisingly Hashirama. For Jiraiya, it seemed that his birth arrived early. Yes, just like that, Jenny-chan, the photographer said, giving her a thumb up. The younger generation cheeks bulged in an attempt to hold back their laughter at hearing Iruka-sensei said that. Such a splendid woman, isn't she? The director returned with Naruto's money and a glass of lemonade in his hand. In case you're among the group that just returned, her name is Jenny Raylight, our pride model, and the current Miss Fiore. Naruto nodded his head. Here, I can't find any beer or wine on this ship, so I hope you are in the mood for some lemonade. Damn, Miss Fiore, I can see why, Karui said, really impressed. It won't be as easy for you. Shut up, Omo. Don't worry, this is fine, because I don't drink. Naruto took the glass of lemonade and took the straws into his mouth. Hard to find a young man like you these days. The director chuckled before giving Naruto his reward. Here, the money I promised in the mission request. Naruto then took it and put into his pocket. How old are you, young man, 18 or 20? I'm older than I look, was Naruto's reply before pointing at Jenny. Mira Jane of my guild is a model too, right? Yep, she was one of the most popular models we ever had 7 years ago before she disappeared along with a large part of Fairy Tail. Naruto nodded his head. If she was still here at that time, I bet that she would easily become Miss Fiore. Wow, I knew Mira was a model, but that big of a reputation. Ino gasped, along with the rest of the women. Seems like it. Naruto nodded his head. He didn't say it out loud, but Naruto admitted that Mira-Jane was very attractive and beautiful, maybe even more than Jenny Raylight. Naruto then finished his glass of lemonade before giving it back to the director. Thanks for the drink, glad to do business with you. He turned around and was about to leave when suddenly, he saw a ship approach with a group of men standing on it. Based on their appearance, Naruto would call that they weren't here for good intention, not to mention they also had a flag with a skull on it. Trouble approaches. Naruto brought it again. Sakura face-palmed, while Kakashi's sweat dropped. They didn't bother to worry, because they knew Naruto would handle this easily. Shit, it is the pirates! He heard someone cried out in horror. Everyone began to get panic. Why are they here? He saw Jenny ran to his left and looked at the approaching pirate with nervousness on her face. Not good. You know these guys? Naruto pointed his hand to the group of pirates. Not really, but I heard about them. Jenny nodded her head before saying they are very dangerous pirates, and most of them are dark mages on the wanted list. Naruto then turned her head to look at Naruto. Do you know how to fight? We have to protect everyone on this. But her eyes widened when she saw Naruto smirked and put his hands together in front of him. He's going to show off, isn't he? Minato's sweat dropped. Well, he has to impress the beautiful lady, Minato. Kushina said, arms crossed. What? Kushina said? Jiraiya yelled from the other side with thumbs up. Look, boss, we hit the jackpot. One of the pirates shouted and pointed his hand at Jenny. Really? Of all the ship you guys could think about, it has to be this one. Naruto smirked widened, as his hands formed various hand seals, so fast that Jenny couldn't see his hands move at all. He then stopped, with his index and little fingers were raised up, the middle and ring fingers are each folded on top of the hand opposite itself and interlocked with each another, and the thumbs were pressed together at their end segments. The irony of life really. Sway-tun. All the shinobi who recognized the hand seals smiled. What are you talking about? Now is not the time for. But her eyes widened when she saw a blue aura began to form around him before exploding in a powerful gust of wind, so powerful that if Jenny didn't have her grip on the cliff she would be blown away. The pirates were also a little taken apart by this. Swayed on the water around him began to rise up on itself around them. Suryudan no Jutsu. Jenny, along with everyone else who was looking at the water, all gasped in shock when they saw it formed into the shapes of a massive amount of water into a giant, powerful dragon. It was so big that the head alone could completely oversize the entire pleasure boat. Wow, it's even bigger than the ones Yagura could form. Such mastery. May gasped, excitingly. B-boss, one of the pirates said in terror. What the hell is that? They screamed out in horror as the dragon then crashed down on their boat, completely destroyed it, and washed all of the pirates away, tossing them into the sea, much to the photography crew and Jenny's amazement. The pirates all screamed out in terror and swam away as fast as they could as the dragon still existed and continued to chase after them. Amazing, Jenny gasped in shock. She had heard from her friends at Blue Pegasus that despite their current status, all of Fairy Tail's mages were incredibly strong, but this was the first time she had seen one in action like this, and it shocked her to the core. Not as big as it used to be, well. Naruto shrugged his shoulders before looking at Jenny, seeing the blue stamp on her arm. Blue Pegasus. Wait, she's a mage. Well, guess she's not really the damsel in distress type of girl then. I like it. A nodded in approval. Yes, you're a mage of Fairy Tail, right? Jenny nodded her head, looking at the symbol of Fairy Tail on the armband he wore on the right sleeve of his shirt. Kind of. Naruto shrugged, which confused Jenny, but he offered the model his hand nonetheless. Naruto Uzumaki, glad that I can protect Fiori #1 flower from bad guys. Neru, smooth bro. Kiba cheered, high-fiving Jiraiya, who grinned proudly from ear to ear. Well, he certainly isn't shy like you were, Minato-kun. Kushina giggled. Minato turned to Sarutobi and whispered, does she remember she used to terrorize everyone, including me? Don't even start, my boy, she'll finish you. The third Hokage's sweat dropped. What he just did brought back a feeling that Naruto already forgot a long time ago. Maybe Mavis was right about all this. Okay, so that wraps up this chapter. Who would like to read next? Irika asked, smiling. What if Konoha reads Naruto Fairy Tail? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.